The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Yaron and Nikos Dialogues show.
Dialogues.
Dialogues. Calling it Dialogues. All right. Dialogues. I hope everybody had a great week, and this is your weekend treat. Is me, Nikos, today on a Saturday instead of Sunday because it's the finals tomorrow, and Nikos has to prep for the finals. He doesn't have time for all of this. So I take it you're unbelievably happy in how it has all turned out.
Happy is a different feeling. Happy in a religious way. Like in the second goal, I didn't celebrate it as a goal. I was just something like, what am I experiencing right now? And I'm not even joking. Like think about how important art is for you, right? Whatever art is for you, football has been for me. So I think what we experienced with Messi in the semi-final was the equivalent of you watching in real time, live streamed, someone drawing the Capella, the Sistine Chapel. It was the Sistine Chapel of football, Messi's 30 minutes in the second half in the semi-final.
I saw some comments somewhere that somebody was going to ask me a super chat question about what is the relationship between sport and art? Can sport give you the same thing that art can? And they
Yes.
never have. So I'm still waiting for that question. If anybody wants to ask it, I will answer it. I'm not sure Nikos will agree, but I'll answer it. But it's yeah, I mean, it was fun to watch. Obviously, England made a massive strategic mistake in how they performed after their first goal, and or their only goal, which Argentina took advantage of. And you got a sense as the minutes ticked by, it was just a matter of time. It was just they hit the post a few times. I mean, it was just they were attacking, and Messi was involved in almost every and you could see him. The other thing I liked is you could see him kind of in the middle, pointing, pass to him, go over there. He was actually directing. He was like a conductor above the box and literally telling people where to go, where the ball should go, how it should happen.
He took over the game. That's the only way you can describe it. He took over the whole game, and there are not many people in football. In basketball, you can do it. Yep. In football, 11 players play. It's way more difficult to take over a game. Anyway, we'll get back to that in the Q&A because some people complain that enough with the soccer, we're not here for the soccer.
Oh, and then other people were saying, they love the soccer, so they love hearing us talk about the soccer. So you can't please all the people all the time.
The other aesthetic experience of the week is that I watched Odyssey yesterday. So if someone wants, we can debate. I can tell you my view later. Short version. Go and watch it and tune out all the idiots on Twitter who are like, "Oh, this is gonna turn you in a Hillary."
I mean, here's the thing.
Whatever.
Even the conservatives. So went to see it, and have all come back and said, that was really good. Like Ben Shapiro came back, he's raving about it. But Michael Knowles, who is completely anti, he said, yeah, there are a few woke things and I can't quite grasp them and everything. But wow, you all should go see it. So even the people who were complaining bitterly about it before they ever saw it, actually blown away by it. So that's a good sign. I think the only negative review I saw of it, I saw one mainstream media negative review of it, but almost uniformly, the reviews have been positive. So I will be watching it in a couple of weeks. I'll actually go in Lisbon to see it. I just don't have time before that. But and I'll probably do a whole show about it, given all the talk about it. But yeah.
So we spoke about one GOAT, Messi.
Yeah.
Today we're going to discuss on someone else on whether he's the GOAT, and this is Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, so Ronald Reagan, it's a great topic. It's a great topic, I think, because we live in a world of Donald Trump. So a lot of us miss Reagan. I mean, we miss pretty much anybody, but we certainly miss Reagan within the Republican Party. And I think there is, to some extent, an idealization of Reagan. That is, there's the question of, is he as good as some people remember him as being? There's also a question of Ayn Rand not voting for him in 1980 versus Jimmy Carter, who you'd think would be an obvious choice, particularly given how many objectivists support Trump, and you compare Trump to Reagan. And there's also the question of, Reagan was an actor and his evolution. And so it's an interesting story just to go through. But I think the real significance is Reagan where, is Reagan what we should strive for? Is Reagan who we should hearken back to? Is he the GOAT, or even the GOAT of the 20th century, never mind the GOAT of all time? The challenge is, and I'll just say the challenge is, there haven't been a lot of good presidents in the 20th.
The bar is very low. Yeah.
So the bar is very low. Certainly, there are probably some good presidents in the 19th century, but in the 20th century, there's just the standard is very, very low. There's maybe one.
Before we discuss everything else, let's put something on the table which is unique in Reagan. Every other president which we discuss as a GOAT is related to some big tragedy or challenge. So, for example, the first president, the Lincoln with the Civil War, then people who had to deal with world wars. Reagan had such an impact that we are putting him in the discussion, although he did not have to face anything existentially big like a civil war or a world war.
Yeah, I think that's right. Although neither did Coolidge, and Coolidge is often in the discussion, and neither did Cleveland, who I think is probably one of the best presidents, if not the best, certainly of the late 19th century. But yes, I mean, it's Reagan didn't, and on the other hand, he gets a lot of credit. People give him a lot of credit both on the economy, as a capitalist, right, supposedly, and on foreign policy. So we need to cover both of those and see and see what our actual objective evaluation is of him, given all that. Again, it's easy to romanticize him, I think, for two reasons actually, and then we'll go to two reasons. One is in comparison to Trump. Yeah, I mean he was a giant, and the second is he gave great speeches. He was a great orator, and the content of the speeches was often excellent. And I've seen now a number of times, for example, his parting speech, which had to do with immigration, and it's like I'm almost in tears, and particularly in comparison to anybody in the Republican Party today speaking about immigration. I mean, what a different world we live in, and what a different attitude. But
there's one third element.
Third
you
element.
said, yeah, compared to today's people, you said his speech. I think also there's something genuine in his character.
Yep.
Obama is also a great orator, not that great, but he's a good orator. But you don't get that this is a guy who genuinely believes these things, or who gives you who has this likability. And so
there's a benevolence and a real love of America there that comes across, I think, in Reagan, that you certainly don't get in Obama. And I don't think I was never impressed by Obama's oratory, so maybe I'm missing something, but I know other people were. So, and people thought Bill Clinton was likable, and that I never got. I never understood that. But Reagan,
he was a charmer. It's a different thing. If you're a charmer, you have to try for it.
Yeah.
With Reagan, it's more organic, I think. But
I think that's right.
I
think that's right. So let's start with his beginnings, where he comes from, and what he did early in his career.
Yeah. So he's born in 1911, small town in Illinois. Now, for the things that are relevant to today, he comes from a house of a Democrat father and an alcoholic father, and a very religious and altruist mother. And this is a family which people will think back then, oh, you know, everyone was socially. No, it's a family which is strictly opposed to discrimination and racial bigotry. And this is something that early on, so there's this highlight, this moment where, you know, there's this football team, American football, and they go to a hotel, and the hotel guy says, you know, no people of color here. That's not how he put it back then. And, you know, the coach says, okay, we are all leaving. So Reagan, from a young age, he gets this idea that it's worth standing up for principles, whatever these principles are. Now, his upbringing, his intellectual upbringing is different from what we'd expect. He takes actually sociology classes at college with very strong social justice orientation, we'd call it today. First election he ever votes is 1932. He votes for FDR. Roosevelt remains throughout his life, even when he changes his views, a giant in his eyes.
By the way, Ayn Rand voted for FDR in 1932.
Really?
Yes. And the main reason was, for her, was that FDR was committed to doing away with prohibition.
I had no idea that Ayn Rand could vote in 1932. I thought this came later. Wow, okay.
No, she was by then married. She was already a U.S. citizen. So I don't think she never voted for him again. But in 32, Roosevelt ran as pretty conservative or pretty market-oriented Democrat, and he was against prohibition, and prohibition was a big deal. And it's always interesting to note throughout her life what issues really got Ayn Rand and what inspired her to vote one way or the other. And in 32, from what I understand, it was prohibition. Anyway,
this is important because this relates to how Ayn Rand will deal with Reagan later in 1980. So Reagan actually in all the elections that FDR stood, he voted for FDR. What he appreciates in FDR is that when everything seems bleak, when everything seems lost, when everything seems in chaos, here's a calming voice telling everyone that it's going to be okay. And literally voice. FDR is very good in these I think they're called the fireside chats.
Yep.
And Reagan pays attention, and he already understands the importance of communication. Later, his nickname would be the Great Communicator. So he starts with a career as a radio pundit. He has to give what today would call live stream commentary on games, sometimes games that he cannot watch. So he gets papers that tell this guy did X, and he has to make up of everything else. But his big passion already is his dreams. He wants to become an actor. And he goes to Hollywood, I think in the late, 37 or something, he has his first movie. And in 1940, he marries for the first time a younger woman who already had married twice in the past. That's important because back then, you had to be very progressive socially to do this.
Yes.
She had married not once, but twice.
Yep.
So he's 29 and he's married to a woman who is married, who's married already twice. At that point, he's making a lot of movies. The most famous one is where he plays a Notre Dame football player, Gip, and he gets the nickname the Gipper. He gives the famous line, "Win one for the Gipper." But then the war happens. And during World War II, he serves the war effort as it happens from California, but he does a lot of good propaganda work to cheer up the troops and all that stuff. And he starts reading Reader's Digest during that time. So he starts being a bit, let's say, intellectually curious. You know, he's not a giant, he's not reading Hegel, but he's intellectually curious. Then the war ends, but the problem is that after the war, people don't anymore like these films where you have the clearly good guy and the clearly bad guy. And Reagan always wanted to play the clearly good guy, the obvious good guy. Maybe he couldn't support it as an actor. He couldn't play the nuanced character, the morally gray character.
Yep.
So he finds himself out of place because he had a more one-dimensional profile. Still though, we could say he's on the top 10, maybe not best actors, but most recognizable faces.
So does he make movies in the 40s and 50s?
Sorry?
Does he make movies in the 40s and 50s?
He makes movies in the 40s, but they're not anymore big successes. And he has contract, and he has a contract that he carries from the 30s, but they cannot find movies that fit for him. So now he gets involved with the Stage Actors Trade Union, to put it this way. So let's see how his politics are at that point. So his politics after World War II are still progressive, but he's flirting now with the idea that being progressive is good, but we cannot be communist. Like communists are actually, he's already made up his mind that communists are actually bad. And his communism starts accidentally because he experiences the thuggery and the hostility of actual communists who considered him a seal for the big studios and a seal for the big capitalists. And actually they threaten him. He's threatened that they're gonna throw acid in his face. So we're talking about very ugly stuff. And that's how he becomes more and more, it started as instinctive, but he becomes an anti-communist almost they force him to be an anti-communist. But in 1948, for example, he's still voting for the Democrats. He votes for Truman. In his personal life, we have something important. In 1947, his wife is practically bored with him, third husband who has to go, and she wants to divorce him. It's a big heartbreak for him. Silver lining, 2 years later, he meets the woman who would become the love of his life, Nancy, later Nancy Reagan, and 3 years later in 52, they get married. 52 is also important because he leaves the leadership of the Stage Actors Guild. But he cannot find job anymore. So he's a has-been. And here is the first time in his life, the life of Ronald Reagan is, I call him the comeback king. When you think he's done, he reinvents himself. So he works a bit in Las Vegas doing not stand-up comedy, but stand-up entertainment. Rich people are eating and drinking, and he says stories from Hollywood. But then, for something like 8 years, he becomes, for the people to understand it, picture a Yaron Brook before Yaron Brook. So his job is literally to travel around and give talks in defense of the American spirit and in defense of business. This starts when he gets employed by General Electric.
Okay.
They have a little TV show, but also they send him on the road. Now, let's pause here for a second and realize what a different country that is. Ronald Reagan, at that point, is still a Democrat. And you could pick a Democrat who was a good speaker, and you could trust him that he would give talks in defense of Americanism and in defense of the free enterprise opposing communism. Today, literally, you'd have to find Yaron to do this job. Back then, a normal American who would be a good speaker would actually do that. So for 8 years, he becomes this spokesperson for business. This is training for him. Imagine, you don't have to imagine. Every night, almost every night, he has to give a talk. It's basically the same themes, but packaged in different ways. And in between, mostly in trains, because he has fear of flying, so he doesn't fly. So he's all the time in a train. He starts reading Reader's Digest. He starts reading books like Economics in One Lesson, The Conscience of a Conservative, that book that came out around that time.
Yep.
And he wakes up one day, he realizes, I'm not anymore a Democrat. So I think in the early 60s, he registers Republican, but his sermon, his talks become too radical now for General Electric. So they tell him, thank you for your service, you're out. So in 1964...
And by the way, at some point here, he reads Ayn Rand.
I didn't find this in any of the biographies I've read.
There's some note somewhere in his journals about Atlas Shrugged.
If you read the speech that we're going to mention in a moment, it's impossible, I think, to write that speech without having read Atlas Shrugged.
Yep.
So, 1964, he's 53 years old, and now his career as a public speaking is also going nowhere. And this is the time when Barry Goldwater is a candidate. We like, our movement, Barry Goldwater. He's a firebrand. Guess who doesn't like him? The country. So 2 weeks before the election, his campaign is at a low. They don't have money. They don't have enthusiasm. So there is this fundraising event in California, I think, and they don't even have a speaker. And they have to think, who could give a talk vaguely on the themes that we like? And they remember, oh, it's this guy. And they bring Reagan as a last choice. He gives a talk, half-an-hour talk, and the people who went there, just basically they think someone is going to stand up there to entertain us. They're applauding and they're shouting. They get absolutely mesmerized by that talk.
Yep.
And straight up, and the people start chatting, why is Goldwater our candidate and not this guy? Notice that Reagan is saying exactly the same things that Goldwater is saying, but he's packaging it different because he's a good communicator. Take note, people, communication matters. The delivery matters. So they tell him, look, this talk is too good to be lost in one fundraising. So they recreate all the setting. They bring a camera, they shoot it in a different setting, but the enthusiasm of the audience is still the same and organic, and they show it to the whole of the country. They buy some airtime back then. It would be the equivalent of today you have a talk and it becomes viral. So in 1964, the whole country sees a guy giving a talk which is called A Time for Changing, and this is when Ronald Reagan is now not anymore the has-been actor. He is now a public political figure. And we can say more about this talk, but I'll pause
Yeah,
it.
a big theme of this talk is this is a time where Medicare is being proposed. And the Johnson administration, if Johnson wins, Medicare is going to pass. This is a big campaign thing for Johnson. Basically, this is the beginning of the welfare state in the United States. The whole and this talk is why Medicare is immoral, why Medicare is wrong, why we should. I mean, imagine giving a talk like that today. I mean, it's unthinkable. Indeed, it was. I mean, he didn't. When he became president, he never mentioned that talk. You should have listened to it. But it's really good. I mean, you guys should. It's on YouTube. You can find the talk. It's a really good talk for a non-objectivist, for political figure. It's a pretty amazing talk, both in content and in the way he delivers it. By the way, I have found the reference to Ayn Rand.
Wow, okay, tell me.
So in May 23rd, my birthday, as it happens, I was 5, 1966, he wrote a letter to a corporate executive, and he wrote, quote, I'm an admirer of Ayn Rand, but he hadn't seen this study. I guess the guy had sent him some particular. Supposedly he was particularly familiar with her essay, Conservatism and Obituary.
Wow.
And of course was very sympathetic to opposition to communism. But yeah, so he knew more than he knew quite a bit, supposedly, about Ayn Rand.
So just for our audience to get an idea, I'll read just 5 lines. And keep in mind, this is, today we'd say, live streamed to the whole country from a conservative. Quote, he's talking about communism. We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars. And it's been said, if we lose that war, and in so doing lose this way of freedom of ours, history will record with the greatest astonishment that those who had most to lose did the least to prevent its happening. This end of quote. This talk also has many quotes that our audience will have heard. This Cuban businessman who speaks to the Americans and said how he escaped Castro, and the Americans tell each other, we're so lucky, we have it so good. And the Cuban says, you are lucky, I'm lucky. I had somewhere to escape. You don't have somewhere to escape. And as he put it in the talk, if we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And he makes this point like 2 minutes in the talk. So everyone is like, oh my God. So it's absolutely crazy that such a talk would become so big at that time, whereas today, I think it's only objectivists could make something of the points that he makes in the talk. Of course, he also makes non-objectivists, to put this way, points, but that's for another discussion. So yes.
There's 64. He's come to national attention. He's looking for something to do. So what does he turn to next?
So
Goldwater obviously loses the campaign in spite of Reagan's brilliant talk.
Yeah, he loses in a landslide. Again, this talk is 2 weeks before the election. Not that anything would change if it was earlier, but anyway. So then in 1966, there's elections in California. And the big donors, let's say the big supporters of the Republican Party in California, they say, look, we have someone who is our own, he's a Californian, he should run for the elections. Now, it's important to remember what happens in California in 65. Actually, more than in 65. We have the student movement, we have the New Left, we have people who, in the eyes of what later we'd call the moral majority, the normal people, they are freaks, the beatniks, all that, with the hair, with the drugs. And also, almost every summer, and particularly in the summer of 65, there are riots. They're the Watts riots. And riots with tens of people dying, not to mention the property loss. So California is freaking out that we cannot go on this way. So within this setting, Ronald Reagan becomes the governor of California in 1966, because some people might think, how did the Republican become the governor in California? First, it's a different California, different demographics.
California. Yeah.
And also it's a California which is in crisis because they have experienced the ugly stuff. Now, what is his program as a governor? What is he promising? I will cut taxes and I will cut expenses. This is his promise. And the thing is, if you see his government career in California, it's very similar with what actually happens when he becomes president.
Yep.
Which is, within months, he realized that he cannot do this because, first of all, he has inherited a debt, let's say, from the previous administration, but also he says, I will cut social services. And immediately people ask, oh, so you're gonna let old people die? You're gonna let poor people? I cannot let poor people, but I'm gonna cut wasteful only expenses. And of course, to cut a long story short, soon he has to raise taxes, and he raises the deficit of California. Some people claim he doubled it, but it depends how you measure it.
Yep.
But still, he's a successful politician because he sells this image. I'm a citizen politician. I'm a citizen politician. I'm one of you. I'm not a career politician. Also in California, he has his first grappling with the issue of abortion. He grapples a lot within him. And he passes a legislation which for the time is progressive compared to, because he expands the situations in which abortion could be provided. Later, he regrets it, but let's just put this on the table that this interesting thing happens.
He also passes welfare reform, so he does, he does restrictability of people, some people to get welfare, tighten eligibility. He reduces the number of people in welfare, so he does a little bit of that. But yes, in terms of fiscal policy, I mean, he actually raises taxes by about $1 billion extra of revenue come in. He rejiggers it, right? So he supports the lowering of property taxes, which happens in California, but a lot of the other taxes are going up. So he's a competent governor that doesn't do anything too radical, doesn't change California in any significant way. I mean, on environment, for example, it's his administration that establishes the California Air Resources Board, right, which is the big state environmental agency that today is choking California and has been choking California for a long time. By the way, all the environmental regulatory agencies are Republican creations. So Richard Nixon was creating them all at the federal level.
The first Earth Day, we're going to discuss it when we discuss maybe environmental. The first Earth Day is under Nixon.
Yep. And the EPA is created under Nixon.
Of course.
And a bunch of regulatory agencies are created under Nixon. Nixon is one of the most statists of all, and statists who achieve something, who actually have an impact in American history.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of Nixon, we forgot to mention that in 1968, Reagan flirts with the idea of running for the Republican primaries. He kind of half-heartedly runs and doesn't run. But when he realizes that Nixon, God knows why, he has the majority, he decides not to challenge it. He does run, though, in 1976 against Ford. And again, God knows why the Republicans think Ford is the good option here.
Well, by the way, this is the beginning of the animosity of Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand was a huge Ford fan. She liked Ford.
But what for?
She supported Ford. She thought Ford was as good as you could be as a Republican. She thought he was he was secular. He was
wait. He was secular. He was secular. You mean as a president? Because personally, he was an actual Christian, and he held.
Yeah, but as president, he stood by separation of church and state. He played to the kind of the more moderate Republicans. He had started the big regulatory deregulation push under his administration. He's the one who hired Alan Greenspan as his chief economic advisor. So she respected him for that. I don't know what Greenspan actually did there, but
and she got also an invitation to the White House. I think she met Ford. No?
There was a famous photo of her with Alan Greenspan and Ford, and I think Ford's wife.
Ford's wife, by the way, we have to also mention this. Ford's wife, compared to if you picture a Republican first lady today, Ford's wife was actually literally progressive, particularly compared to first ladies.
And I think that's partially Ford's irreligiosity when it comes to governing, when it comes to actually governing. Ford was good in economics. I mean, good compared to Nixon, good compared to most of the Republicans out there, and he was good on social issues. So she viewed Ford as about the best you could expect. She also viewed Ford as a man of character. She thought he was just a good guy, and he had no charisma. He couldn't give a rousing speech, but she thought he had a solid character, and again, compared to Nixon, compared to Eisenhower was a nothing. She thought he was better than Eisenhower. So, she was.
Also, sorry, to let people know, Ford does not win an election. Nixon resigns. Ford becomes president. Ford wins the primaries in 1976, and he loses to a guy who, before this election, was a nobody.
It's a peanut farmer from.
A peanut farmer. Carter.
Yeah.
So in 1980, Reagan again decides to run in the primaries. Oh, by the way, when he loses in 1976, you're the good guy in maths. 1976 minus 1911, how old was he?
Oh, 65.
Okay, so when he loses in 1976. Sorry?
You're talking about Reagan.
I'm talking about Reagan, yes.
Yep.
When Reagan loses the primaries in 76, everyone thinks this is your last chance. It's like when Messi lost the World Cup, didn't win the World Cup in 2018. It's like, next time you're going to be too old.
Yep.
And yet, because he's of good health and he kept himself active and all that stuff. He runs again in 1980. I think he's 69 by then, but again, I almost failed high school. He was born in 1911, do the math.
Yep.
So he wins the primaries in 1980 against his biggest opponent was Bush Sr. And again, his main platform is, I'm going to cut taxes, I'm going to cut regulations, I'm going to cut spending, and I'm going to make our military mightier and stronger. This is his platform. Exactly the same platform he ran for California. Just add the military stuff. And around that time, he gets excited with this idea of supply side economics.
Yep.
So let's give just one thing though before we get to, he wins the elections in 1980. But let's give some context where the country is in 1980. Think what happened
in 1980, right?
In 1980.
Yep.
Sorry, what do you say?
No, I thought you said 98. So in
No,
1980.
980, yeah. So when he becomes for the first time president. So in the previous 2 decades, the country had experienced the assassination of a president, many political assassinations, the Kennedys, the Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, a defeat in Vietnam, which was an absolute humiliation, and 50-something thousand people lost. The humiliation in Iran with the hostages, the counterculture, the Nixon scandal, and the economy. I think at the beginning of the 1980, the inflation is something like above 12%, and unemployment is something like 7%.
Yep.
So the country had experienced 2 decades of humiliation, despair, pessimism, and half the country thought, this is not my country anymore. Also during that time, you have Roe versus Wade, you have desegregation. So it has been 2 very turbulent decades. So this is the context within which Ronald Reagan wins the presidency in 1980.
Crime is rising. The attempt to rescue the hostages in Iran results in 2 helicopters crashing over the desert in Iran. It's just a few weeks before the election, literally. I can't remember, 2-3 weeks before the election, this happens. So the country, and there's Jimmy Carter coming on television during one of the energy crises, wearing a sweater, basically telling everybody, yeah, I know the heating's expensive, wear a sweater, wear a sweater. So it reminds me of Mamdani recently coming on, telling New Yorkers not to put their air conditioning below 78 and just to suck it up in terms of, but yeah, Jimmy Carter came on television with a sweater telling Americans, yeah, I mean, there's no choice. This is life. So Jimmy Carter was a defeatist. The country is a negative mood. Everything is going badly. I mean, but give it more context even. Japanese companies are eating Americans' lunch, right? So Americans used to make all the TVs in the world. By the 1980s, they're making not zero, but they're making almost no TVs. Videotape, which was invented in America, completely Japanese. American auto companies on the brink of bankruptcy. Chrysler goes bankrupt early in Reagan's presidency because of Japanese cars coming in. Everything that everybody talks about today, industrialization. America was losing in every dimension, was losing to the Japanese. Japan was rising. Even Germany was rising. German economy was chugging along. Industrialization in Germany was great. Everything in the United States seemed over. Crime was increasing. It felt like poverty was increasing. New York was a dump. New York had just gone bankrupt. In the late 1970s, New York had gone bankrupt. There were strikes all the time, garbage piling up in the streets of New York. I mean, it really is hard to recreate the 1970s, how dark of an atmosphere there was, and how pessimistic people were about America's future. It seemed like the rest of the world had caught up. America was in decline. it was there. And unemployment was very high. Inflation was very high. And the future was in Japan. Clearly, the future was in Japan, not in America. And I mean, this is the time also that really molded Donald Trump to a large extent. I mean, he is known in the 1980s as being anti-Japan. That was a big thing about trade. He hated Japan. So this is and Jimmy Carter really represented this in terms of his meekness and pessimism. And Ronald Reagan was a breath of fresh air. I mean, he came onto the scene with an optimistic message, with excitement, with we're still the dominant and we can be even more dominant, and with all these messages about liberty and freedom and individualism even, and the role of government, minimized role of government. And it was a real change in rhetoric and attitude. And America changed. America really changed in the 1980s.
So how did he plan to change America? So he hires a wonder kid, the guy who is 35 years old, David Stockman. Although he had gray hair, he looked older. But he would be his magician when it comes to controlling the budget. Now, when you want to control the budget, there are two things. Either you do your tax cuts first and spending cuts later, in which case you're still going to have a big deficit, or you cut spending first and then you cut taxes if you can afford it. But Reagan says, no, we start by cutting taxes. I promise people we're going to cut taxes. Now, what do they, so they do cut taxes indeed, but what type of expenses do they want to cut? And they say, look, we're going to, for example, we're going to cut, to reduce officials from traveling, and think they're going to save money from there. We're going to cancel orders for new office furniture. And this is how we're going to cut the deficit. We're not going to touch Social Security. We're not going to touch Medicare. And we're going to have more military expenses. This is the equivalent of, how to put it, like, picture Kim Kardashian saying, I'm going to buy 3 new private jets, but I'm going to control my expenses because I will unplug my TV when I don't watch TV. And this is how I'm going to cut expenses. So obviously it would never happen. So Stockman, who is his economy mastermind, let's say, clearly soon realizes this is going to shoot the deficit out of any proportion. So he manages to cut taxes. He does not manage to cut expenses because he does not touch what is 50% of federal expenses, which is Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and the military expenses. But this is your field, so I'll leave this to you.
Yeah, I mean, he cuts taxes. He also increases taxes. So
Later, because he has to. Yeah.
Later, and he simplifies the tax code, which is I think the real contribution he makes is tax simplification, which immediately gets undone by George Bush Sr. and then every administration since. And today the tax system is more complex than before Reagan. But he simplifies, in 1986, he simplifies the tax code, which has, I think, long-term huge positive consequences in the United States. In 81, he comes in and they do a tax cut. They cut the big marginal tax rates. But as you said, they don't really cut spending, the kind of spending they land up cutting. And part of it is very small. And part of it is he has to cut a deal with the Democrats. The Democrats, remember, control the House and the Senate. And we have to remember, this is a period in which the Democrats are controlling the House and Senate. They've controlled the House and Senate for a long time. It's only in the 1990s that the Republicans come back into control of those. So he has to cut a deal with them. And this happened in California as well. Even if he wanted to cut more, the Democrats wouldn't have allowed him. So, there was negotiation. So in order to get his tax cuts, he had to give up some of the, spending cuts. And at the time, he believed, he was following Art Laffer's ideas, and he believed that tax cuts were more important than spending cuts. I think it's a huge political and economic error, but this is what they did. They cut taxes. He also, he had he was lucky in a sense that he came in with Paul Volcker as chairman of the Fed. Paul Volcker had actually been appointed by Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter did, in spite of everything I said about Jimmy Carter did amazing things for the economy. Jimmy Carter was one of the best presidents of the 20th century when it came to the economy. He did it quietly, and it was a lot was done by Democrats in that House and the Senate, but they deregulated. All the big deregulation that you know of happened under Jimmy Carter, not under Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan completed a lot of it and added to it, but a big chunk of it was done under Jimmy Carter. And one of the things Jimmy Carter did, which was good, was he appointed Paul Volcker. So Paul Volcker both drove the U.S. into recession right in the first 2 years of Ronald Reagan's presidency, but also because of that recession was necessary to drive the junk out, if you will, to cleanse the system. And starting, I forget the date, but July 1982, I think it was sometime in the summer of 1982, the U.S. economy just turns around and it just goes straight up. And interest rates peak at some ridiculous number, and then they start going down dramatically. If you had bought bonds in 1982, you did very, very well in the decade that followed. If you bought the stock market bottoms, maybe that's July 82. Anyway, sometime in mid 82, the stock market bottoms, and oh my God, does the S&P and pretty much every Dow and everything go on a tear, really until today, with a few bumps, but really until today. And
Reagan does not understand all these things. So he's trying to have lunches with Volcker to tell him, I mean, he respects the institutional independence, but he's trying to tell him, what are we doing? Can we lower the interest? And Paul, actually, first time I think they met, Reagan asks him seriously, because he was a guy who wanted to learn, why exactly is there a Federal Reserve? And Volcker's jaw drops, but then start explaining to him. So Reagan in the first meeting is like, do we really need you guys?
Well, he was right. I mean, I guess you read some Ayn Rand and figured that you don't need a Federal Reserve. But he in the world in which he inherited, yes, the Federal Reserve was there and an important entity. But yeah, so Reagan, he doesn't really understand economics, but he has people around him that a lot of the people around him are free market people. They do understand economics. They're trying to deregulate. They would like to cut spending, but can't. And the tax cuts of 1981, a good beginning, but the tax system is still super complex, and the people around him understand that what really needs to happen is tax simplification. Which he does in 1986. There are only two tax rates after 1986 tax cut, 15 and 28%. So, which is a revolution. You don't have these multiple today. I don't know how many tax rates there are, and then there's all kinds of other ways in which they come and grab your money. And then he kind of has a sense, and the people around him have a sense, we need to do something about Social Security. So they put a commission together for Social Security. And they appoint as the head of the commission, of all people, our good friend Alan Greenspan. And thank God, I guess, that Ayn Rand was already dead when this happened. Because, Alan Greenspan, here was his opportunity. He's the head of the commission to reform Social Security. He can advise anything. Nobody's even committed to doing what he's going to advise. He could have a minority opinion and a majority opinion. He could mention privatization. He could mention doing away with it completely. But no, in classic Alan Greenspan post-Ayn Rand fashion, the proposal that the committee adopts and that Ronald Reagan supports is what we're going to do is increase taxes. We're going to increase the payroll tax, and we're going to slightly increase the incentive to keep working beyond 65. And that's our proposal. And Ronald Reagan embraces that. And indeed, the payroll taxes you pay today are the consequence of that. And here was a real opportunity. Somebody wanted to reform Social Security. And this is the reform they got, which is no reform at all. When I heard about Alan Greenspan, that was it. I have no patience for anybody trying to defend him or trying to articulate some kind of story. We'll have to do a show on Alan Greenspan someday, but because he is important. But
he actually died a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Yep. So this is so Reagan. Most economic policies are a big mixture, but the recession ended and inflation ends because of Volcker, not because of him. Government spending as a percentage of GDP, it doesn't grow. Under his term, so we'll give him credit.
Because GDP grows, though.
Because GDP is growing.
Yeah.
So government spending in dollar terms grows, but when he leaves office, it's lower than when he enters by about a percentage point. So it goes from 21.6 to 20.5 in terms of spending. Taxes, receipts go from about 19% of GDP to about 18% of GDP. That's a range in which taxes, usually gravitate towards. So the deficit is still quite large. And in GDP is actually about the same as when he starts. It ends, although in the middle it's much higher because tax receipts first collapse and then come back, partially because of supply side reasons. Supply side is the idea that if you cut taxes, people actually pay more. That's partially true, but the more taxes, really what generate that was the simplification and the GDP going up. The fact that people were making more money, so they actually paid more taxes, which is what supply side says.
And one more area where we need to check his legacy is free trade, because he talks the talk, but he does many of the things that Trump does. So he controls tariffs, but the enemy is not China, it's Japan. So he's not only rhetorically, he's for free trade.
He's for free trade, and the people around him support free trade. I mean, that's the I think the idea, the free market idea that dominates his circle. But he's very different than Trump. Trump's agenda is tariffs. The only thing Trump believes in life is tariffs, and Trump hates trade deficits, and Reagan didn't. But he is pressured by business. He cares about business community, and he's pressured by business. The auto industry, you remember, he bails out Chrysler. So, he is responsible for bailout. He can't resist the tug of altruism, as you described it in his governorship years. He can't resist, but it's an American auto company, and we're going to go bankrupt, and that's never happened. He can't resist that. So he gives a big loan, a government loan to Chrysler to bail them out, and then they luck out on gaining a great CEO, Lee Iacocca, who releases the minivan, and basically it's the minivan that saves Chrysler, and they pay back the loan to the government early because they make so much money on the minivan, so they get lucky. But he does that. But then the chip industry comes to him. Intel comes to him and begs for help, and he doesn't like. He doesn't like the idea of tariffs. So he goes to the Japanese and says, how about you just agree to export fewer chips to the United States? We're not going to put a tariff. And he did the same with the auto industry. He goes to the Japanese auto industry and says, I get it, I'm free trade and everything, but you seem to be dumping. You seem to be selling below cost. So how about you just sell fewer cars? So he's pulled. There's no pull with Trump, right? Trump is all in on tariffs and anti-trade. With Reagan, it's more that he can't resist the pull of industry, and he doesn't have the economic backbone to stand up against them. So he develops these other mechanisms by which to get the Japanese to sell fewer cars in the U.S. and to get them to sell fewer microprocessors in the United States.
So if this is all with his economics, there are two areas we need to address. The elephant in the room, his relationship to religious. The other thing, foreign policy. He's known as the guy who ended the Cold War. We'll see if this is true. Which shall we take first?
Yeah, let's take foreign policy first, and then we can take we can deal with the religious issue after that.
Okay. So when he comes to power, what happens, the big things that happen in the world is in the day of his inauguration, the hostages from Iran are released. This has nothing to do with Reagan. It was just a coincidence. This was Carter's negotiations. 1 year in his presidency, the Soviet Union is tightening its grip around Poland and imposes martial law in Poland. This is the time where Poland is run by, where Poland is, there is the Solidarity movement and the local communist rulers who are puppets of Moscow. They put in front a military man, Jaruzelski, and he imposes martial law. Reagan is so adamant with that, he wants to impose a full economic embargo to Soviet Union. He's even considering closing the embassy, but he's talked out of it. And at the end, he did what he does best. He gave a speech. So he sent a strong message via a speech. And 2 years later, he gives also the evil empire speech, where he has this very unique line that we are dealing with an evil empire. But then, so first we're going to talk about Soviet Union, and then we're also going to talk about Arab terrorism and all that stuff. But in 1985, there's a big development in Soviet Union. So in 1982, Brezhnev dies. Then in the next 2 years, there are two very old people who, two leaders who are too old to actually have any effect. But in 1985, a relatively young guy, new guy called Mikhail Gorbachev comes to power. And Reagan is intrigued. He thinks he can talk to this guy. So with Reagan, you have this, I wouldn't say contradiction, but this dichotomy. On the one hand, he's convinced that communism is the ultimate evil in the world. He views it in apocalyptic, religious, moral, in every possible way. But also, he's very scared with the idea of a nuclear war. And this has a religious background. He thinks that there's something into the prophecy of Armageddon, and he wants to avoid
the apocalypse.
The apocalypse. We can talk later about Reagan the mystic, and particularly his wife. They had an astrologer who had a say on everything, including what day and what time he is to meet with foreign leaders. Anyway, so he meets Gorbachev in 1985, first in Geneva. It's very awkward in the beginning, but again, Reagan has all this aura. He's in his, when it comes about interpersonal relationship, he's in his element. Surprisingly, he realizes we have some space of communication with this guy, and this guy is different. That's the first and most important thing. This guy is different. And of course, it's not just Reagan's idea. His secret services, CIA, tell him, this guy is not like all the others. This guy, is a true believer in a way that he thinks that socialism needs to be better than this. But also, he's someone who cares about the things that socialism supposedly cares about. Progress, people living free and all that. So he takes the story seriously, Gorbachev. So they meet in Geneva. Nothing happens, but it breaks the ice. In 1986, they meet in Reykjavik, in Finland or Iceland. Iceland. Yes, that meeting was so important that there's a film coming out with J.K. Simmons, and this is the meeting where Reagan puts on the table 0 nukes. We throw all our nukes in the, like in Superman 3, they throw them to the space, no nukes anymore on planet Earth. And it is on the table. And for a moment, there's a good possibility that Gorbachev is going to agree. But Gorbachev says, in one condition, you get rid of Star Wars. Do you want to tell people what Star Wars is?
Star Wars was an anti-missile defense idea. It's probably too early, but the idea was to use lasers from space to knock out intercontinental ballistic missiles as they are in space or in above the atmosphere before they re-enter to shoot them down with lasers. It's probably a technology that is possible today, probably not possible 40 years ago. But it was something that Reagan had initiated, and it was the right idea. The idea was use technology to make it impossible for anybody to launch against the United States, for any missile to reach the United States. It's the ultimate, defense system against ballistic missiles.
So here's the weird thing with Reagan. On the one hand, he says, I don't understand what is this mutual assured destruction. I don't want to rely on the Soviets or on any other crazy to nuke me. Because before Reagan, with Nixon and Brezhnev, the deal was, look, you can destroy us, we can destroy you. So we will agree, not that we will not develop more attacking weapons, we will agree we won't develop defensive weapons so that we are on your mercy and you are on our mercy.
All that, yeah.
Reagan does not accept that. But at the same time, he tells Gorbachev, look, I promise to you, when we develop this, we're going to give you the technology. You will also be able to take down our missiles because I'm not afraid of you. But what if a crazy new Hitler guy appears? We both need to have defense against nukes. Gorbachev does not accept it. And seemingly, the meeting in Reykjavik is a fiasco. They don't agree at the end. It's like a couple that they had a fight. It's your fault. No, it's your fault. But the important thing, big picture, is first time on the table, we both get rid of our nukes. By the way, the Europeans are freaking out. It's like, what on earth are you doing? Without the nukes, we are at the mercy of the Red Army storming all of Western Europe. Reagan is, I know what I'm doing. In between early, I think 1987, he gives his infamous Mr. Gorbachev tear down that wall.
Great speech.
And yet, in Berlin, and yet, so many people are scared, oh my God, this is going to piss Gorbachev off. And yet, at the end of the year, at the end of 1987, Gorbachev travels to Washington and they sign a treaty where, to put simply, they ban the intermediate range nuclear forces, so that our audience understands without making complicated. There are 4 ways to throw a nuke. From an airplane, like in Japan, from a submarine, through intercontinental ballistic missiles, or through smaller range missiles. Europe was full of these smaller range missiles. So they agree, we're going to get rid of these. And again, somewhere at the end of the road, maybe one day we're going to get rid of all the possible missiles. So this was the most important treaty. And here, Yaron, I want your commentary, because someone will say, oh, this was, you sanctioned the enemy. I had this discussion with Harry Binswanger. He claimed you should have 0 discussions with the enemy. But if Reagan thought, and the Secret Service said, there's an opening here, didn't he do well that he had this attack of friendship towards Gorbachev?
I mean, given what happens later, no. I mean, it was unnecessary. It was Gorbachev. I mean, the Soviet Union was dead, right? It was just a question now of when it was going to officially die. I don't think it died from an excess of love coming from the United States. I think it died because of internal reasons that had to do with the Soviet. And we could talk about why the USSR fell. And while I think Reagan had some causal impact on it, I don't think it was the major causal impact. The major causal impact was internal. Much better to sign a deal like that with Yeltsin, and he probably would have got even better terms than you got with Gorbachev. So, no, I think if the United States had taken the attitude, particularly earlier, right? I mean, the U.S., remember, bailed the USSR in the 70s with grain shipments and what was it? Kissinger's, what was the term he used? Détente. I mean, that was a huge mistake. I don't know that the nuclear deal in 86 added much to the world and made the world a safer place, given where the USSR was headed. And I think if Reagan had been tougher, I don't think anything would have changed.
Hmm.
Maybe I don't think it would have happened faster, but I don't think it would have had it slower.
Okay. That's, I'm not sure I agree, but so the biggest factor here is Gorbachev. The question is, would Gorbachev has the space to dismantle the empire if he didn't think that he has someone he can trust in the White House? But
I don't.
the
I don't
fact
think.
is,
I don't
yes,
think that was. I mean, it's an interesting question. You'd have to really dig deep into Gorbachev's thinking. But I don't think at the end of the day, the dismantling of the empire had to do with his good relationship with people in the White House. And of course, by then Reagan was not there, and it was Bush. And now
okay.
Bush was even more of a compromiser in that sense than Reagan was. But yeah, we were not on the verge of Gorbachev was not going to launch a nuclear war against the United States. That was not a fear. So the question is, would he have delayed breaking up the empire without that agreement in place? I don't see it. I don't see it.
And remember, the dismantling starts before Gorbachev. It was a big surprise to the world that the Red Army did not storm Poland in 1981,
Yeah.
as it did storm Warsaw in 1967. And this was during Brezhnev. So already from Brezhnev, the understanding was we're
They're
on the
weak.
way out here.
Yeah, they're much weaker than people assume. I do think it's important to note, and this is, the Reagan's speeches have a real impact, and the bully pulpit, the talking in moral terms as the leader of the free world, as American president, is huge. This is again one of the evils of Donald Trump, of being such a just horrible person, and then not really believing in freedom and not being able to articulate even superficially. But Reagan actually gave these speeches, and they inspired the Poles, they inspired the Czechs, they inspired the East Germans. So when they ultimately tore down the wall, there had been a buildup towards that over the previous decade, which started in Poland and then spread through Eastern Europe. And I think Reagan was inspiring to them. So when Reagan says, tear down this wall, that video clip, in a sense, went viral in Eastern Europe, right?
I'll tell you something about this, because when you hear a phrase so many times, it becomes a cliche. Today, for the first time, I actually watched the video. I've heard this phrase a million times. I thought, okay, yeah, whatever. I was struck by emotion. It's I don't know, it's his voice, it's the whole behind him. He has a
The wall is
bulletproof
right there.
Yeah, the wall is literally there, and he has a bulletproof glass because he's within range of snipers of East Germany. So the gravitas, sometimes it's difficult for us to understand the gravitas within that context.
So
Anyway.
his voice, his speeches, his rhetoric had a massive impact on America in the sense that both his domestic and foreign policy, in a sense of optimism and positive and success and achievements and pro-capitalism in his speeches, not in his actions. And they had a profound impact on foreign policy. I think his speeches inspired Eastern Europeans ultimately to rise up against the Soviets in ways that I think haven't been fully documented. Now, remember, Eastern Europe, a lot of things, that's another interesting topic for us to talk about is kind of what was going on in Eastern Europe in the 80s. They were reading Ayn Rand, they were reading Hayek, they were reading Mises, they were reading Friedman.
Contraband, illegal.
Yeah, I mean, I had the former president, the first president of Albania, the first after the fall, right after Albania achieved independence and became throughout the communists, the former president of Albania come up to me, shake my hand, and say, Ayn Rand inspired me. She was the inspiration for what we did. Yes. We were all reading Ayn Rand. I mean, not only Ayn Rand, but we were all reading Ayn Rand in Albania in the 1980s. And that inspired them to revolution in the 90s and for independence and whatever. So,
no offense to my Albanian friends, that's the craziest thing. I would never expect that I would hear that. That's so crazy.
Yes, the first
because
president
we are
of
also
Albania.
talking about the most isolated regime
Yes.
Picture a North Korea, one
That's
level
what it
below
was
North
then.
Korea.
Yeah. And they were brutal. And yeah, they were in secret reading Ayn Rand. And we know this is true of Eastern Europe, throughout Eastern Europe. Ayn Rand, and again, not just Ayn Rand, Hayek and Mises and Friedman and a bunch
And
of others.
watching Chuck Norris movies. Don't
Yep.
underestimate.
Yeah, and listening to the to the Beatles, and then later on to the Sex Pistols. All this had an impact, and seeing genes. I mean, so anyway, that's a different show we should do on Eastern Europe, because I think it would be a fascinating show about the role of genes in the fall of the Berlin Wall. But so I think the important point here vis-a-vis Reagan is rhetoric made a difference. It made a difference in the world, in the way people approach the world. It made a difference in the United States, and made a difference certainly.
Let's make this concrete with one very short story. When the martial law is applied to Poland, the Polish ambassador resigns, whatever.
Yeah.
The first place they go with his wife is the White House, and the wife cries in the shoulder of Reagan when she hears his speech. He gave his Christmas speech about Poland.
Yep.
Picture today Iranian dissidents going to the White House and crying on Donald Trump. He would probably include them in a deal and send them back. I think
Yeah.
Ben posted something like that the other day.
Yep.
I found it absolutely crazy.
Yeah, and
Anyway.
Lech Walesa years afterwards said that they were inspired. Just the people in Poland were inspired by Reagan at the time. It kept them going. It was so moral, standing up, the opposite of sanction, right? Or exactly, sanctioning the good is hugely powerful. Even if you don't do anything else but sanction the good, tell them that they are good, remind them that they are good, and tell them they have your moral support. That is huge, and that is relevant for Iran today. But let's do the Middle East, because we're way behind.
Yeah, we're way
And
behind.
we
I'm
also have
gonna
to do a
skip
song.
Latin
We have to do
America.
Shahbaz's song.
Yeah, we're gonna skip Latin America. If people they can ask about Nicaragua and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So Reagan was very harsh to Israel, which is most people would not have like this in his mind. He had shout-out matches with Begin, who was back then the prime minister. The biggest so Israel. Reagan is very angry when Israel bombs the nuclear facilities in Iraq. Crazy.
Yeah.
But it becomes even worse in 1982 when Israel invades Lebanon. So this was one of the worst crises between Israel and the United States. By the way, for the brain-dead idiots out there who post, when has a president ever said no to Israel? Reagan did this in multiple occasions.
And
Yes.
Good.
The big picture in the Middle East is in Lebanon, we have the beginnings of what later became Hezbollah. So in 1983, you have two tragedies. In April, you have the bomb attack in the embassy, which kills tens of Americans and many other bystanders. And in October, of course, you have the worst terrorist attack, which is a suicide bomber going to the Marine barracks and killing some, I think, 200 something Americans and many friends. And a few months, and during that time, the Lebanese get some 25 Americans kidnapped here and there. And this is the most controversial part, perhaps, of Reagan's presidency. He's trying to find back channels to release these hostages, and he's doing it by under the table, through businessmen, through shady figures, giving money to the Iranians, so that the Iranians would give them this money to the Lebanese to release the hostages. Some of the hostages were dead from torture. Then the Lebanese would release one hostage, but then say, okay, we're gonna kidnap more Americans because this works. The Americans are giving us weapons, they're giving us money. To make the situation even crazier, some of that money through Iran, through these back channels, are going to Latin America because Reagan wants to support anti-communist guerrillas, but he cannot do it officially because he has to go through Congress. So this is moral horrendous stuff.
Yeah.
Abomination, yeah, horrendous stuff. So this is the biggest stain in his legacy, in my view, in foreign policy. how he dealt with the hostage situation and how he never truly understood the Middle East. With Soviet Union, it was easy. Reagan was a man of simple ideas.
Yep.
The Soviet Union has to lose, we have to win. With the Middle East, with the complications there, it was not this simple thing that he could grasp. And I think his legacy in the Middle East is at best mixed.
So ultimately, I think the two worst things he did, and they're both related, was in 1982, Israel was about to invade West Beirut, and where the PLO, Yasser Arafat was there. He had about 6,000 or more PLO fighters with him. They were in tunnels underneath all these buildings that you see, the bunkers and all the tunnels. They were there in 1983. They're not new. They've just dug them deeper and added to them. But they were always there. The Hezbollah is just taking over what the PLO built back then. And Israel was ready to go in. I know because I was planning. I was part of the team that was planning that. I had to try to figure out where the tunnels were and try to put that in maps and everything. And this was going to be the next phase. And the goal was to kill Yasser Arafat. And killing Yasser Arafat would have changed the dynamics of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict quite dramatically. Again, we can get into that another time. Ronald Reagan basically said, no, you cannot do that. And then he cut a deal. And he cut a deal allowing
with the PLO.
What's that?
He cut a deal with the PLO. He opened
with the PLO, with the Lebanese, and forced the Israelis to accept it. Whereas Yasser Arafat would be allowed to leave Lebanon with all of his fighters on boats provided by ships provided by the United Nations and sail ultimately to Tunisia, where he set up his new headquarters. United States would also send Marines in to serve as a peacekeeping force as part of this deal, right? That ultimately led to 241 Americans, 220 Marines, 241 Americans dying when Hezbollah blew it up. Hezbollah really at the time was just an arm of Iranian intelligence, or IRGC, and basically forced Israel to accept Arafat staying alive. And literally there's a photo as Arafat is leaving of an Israeli sniper with Arafat in the crosshair, and he's not allowed to pull the trigger. Now, again, my view is would have changed the dynamics of the Middle East completely, certainly of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict if Arafat is killed then. But he's not, and a lot of bad things happen as a consequence. A whole series of bad things happen later on. Then the second thing, of course, happens in 1983, again in Beirut, when these Marines are killed. Reagan comes on television and gives one of his powerful, "We're going to get them. We will not. We won't sleep until every one of the people responsible for this is killed," or whatever. And then they lob, 3 missiles into the Bekaa Valley, where Hezbollah has a base far away from Beirut. And basically the U.S. Sixth Fleet, which is right there, ready to, go into Lebanon, really leaves. And the U.S. just tail between its legs and it leaves. And bin Laden, years later, will write that this is one of the examples for why America is a paper tiger, why we have a chance of beating them, why we should attack them on 9/11. This was one of, not the only one, but one of the major motivations that he uses on how weak America is. So you could think about that decision by Reagan as inspiring bin Laden during the decade. And of course, I'll just add, since I mentioned bin Laden, it is Ronald Reagan's CIA that arms bin Laden to fight the Soviets in Afghanistan. And arms the future enemies of the United States, the Taliban and Al Qaeda and all of these radical Islamist groups in Afghanistan. It's Reagan's CIA that does that. So In terms of Islam, you're absolutely right. He completely doesn't get it, doesn't understand Iran, doesn't understand bin Laden, doesn't understand Lebanon, and surprisingly, doesn't understand American weakness and the impact that has for decades. To this day, I think we're still, so
And so that people understand how history just rhymes and repeats itself. There is, and we know all this very clear from the records. We have all the records from the Situation Room. At some point, they tell him, we can kill one of the leaders of the Shiites in Lebanon. Shall we pull the trigger? And then someone says, but is there going to be innocent bystanders? And they say maybe or something like that. Abort the mission.
Yep. Yep.
And this happens in the early 80s.
Yes, and this is the early leaders of Hezbollah. Imagine going after them early on, what potential impact that would have on the development of Hezbollah and its growth.
So we've left many things we haven't mentioned: the assassination attack, the religion thing. Shall we mention it, or shall we go to the questions and expect that someone's going to bring it up?
Why doesn't somebody ask in the Q&A why Ayn Rand was so adamantly opposed to Reagan and what we think about that, right? And what we think about...
It's going to be interesting because we might disagree here with Yaron.
Yeah. So somebody asked that in the super chat so that we, and put it in like a $20 or $100 or $500 question.
Yeah, I've prepped my whiteboard.
And
I'll be disappointed if I don't use it.
He's got facts to my opinion. So, yeah, there might be a little bit of disagreement here. But so somebody come in with a question on that. I can't do an overall evaluation without that, because I still hold that, and I agree with Ayn Rand that Reagan legitimized the evangelical movement, or the moral majority, or whatever you want to call it, kind of an activist evangelical political movement. He legitimized that as a part of the Republican Party in a way that no other president had done. And, that had profound impacts on what happened later. And that to me has had such a negative impact on the Republican Party that it's hard to be positive about Reagan. And then we also ended on the foreign policy stuff, which was very negative. So and then he didn't do that much economically. So there's a lot of negatives.
It sounds like a lot of negatives.
And there's no question America changed because of him.
America changed because of him. And again, we have to keep in mind the context of where America was before, for how long the GOP at least paid lip service to the principles of Reagan, or to these very simple principles that he carried and he understood, and also where American conservatism, republicanism today, that this legacy has been swept off. So this is why I think that still today he's not overhyped. He is someone who his moral message and his ideological message is for freedom. and his defense of freedom is something that we need. So my overall score has a plus beside it, and I have some defense for the religion stuff, but we've been going on for 1.5 hours, so let's go to the questions.
So mine is overall negative, slight negative, even though I accept everything you said about the positives, because of where we are today. I don't think you can. Now, maybe we would have got here anyway. Maybe the Republican Party.
That's my point. That I think I have evidence that the Republicans were going towards the religion anyway, and if anything, Reagan maybe even slowed it down a little. But maybe we'll get to it.
Maybe, but that's a hard one, and yeah, and all right, what are we doing?
Sosbot song review.
All right, so we have a song review, and this is Simple Minds. I don't know if Shazbot is here, but Simple Minds, Don't You? And Nikos said, when you hear it, you'll immediately recognize this song. And I did, but not really, because I haven't heard it that many times. So it's not, yeah, I was a little out of it in the 1980s when it comes to popular music. So yeah, it's a popular song. It made it to the top of the what do you call it? The Billboard. It was the most popular song of that year. It was associated with this very, very famous movie, whose name slips my mind right
The
now.
Breakfast Club.
Breakfast Club, which was the hip, cool, sophisticated movie of the 1980s. I didn't like it, but it was not a good movie. But that was the song. I see Enric loves this song. Kubaba loves this song. He thinks it's a great song. I'm indifferent. It doesn't quite. It's not like last week where I really didn't like it because it was super repetitive. This has a little bit more to it. It's a little less repetitive. But I don't know. I mean, it's going to be hard to please me when it comes to popular music. I don't like popular music.
Well,
I did not mean to do that. I'm probably violating copyright, so I'm going to shut that down. That was the beginning of the song. I pressed played somehow.
okay.
I just not popular music is going to be hard to find something I like that is made after, I don't know, 19, I'm a Bob Dylan guy. I'm a Simon and Garfunkel guy. I love the Beatles and Pink Floyd. And I'll take 1960s leftist, what do you call it?
Agit pop.
Resistance folk music. The Bob Dylan, Joan Baez, over any of these guys any day. Bob Dylan, there's real poetry and there's real music there. There's real sophistication. This is schmaltz. I mean, it's cute, it's nice, but it's not quite as it's not quite as sugary as last week. But obviously, Nikos likes this song.
It's one of the, let's say, 10 songs that whenever it's on radio, I will never skip. I will never change the radio station. I love this song. I consider it one of the best 80 songs. It has these changes. First of all, the message is interesting. It has this sweetness because actually it wasn't written as a romantic song.
It's not a romantic song.
You can interpret it as a romantic song, but it was not written as a romantic song. It has these nice lyrics, slow change will tear us apart. It's very 80s. So today we spoke about Reagan. Doing all this research about Reagan, I was very much in an 80s nostalgia. So this was the perfect soundtrack to today's episode. So I want to say thank you to Sosbot, not just for his contributions, his monetary contributions. Yep. It's a song that whenever I listen to it, it cheers me up. And I was just listening it, hyping myself just before I connected to Zoom with Yaron. So once more, thank you. Excellent.
How old were you in 1980? When did this
85.
come out? 85.
I was 2 years old.
2. And this has an impact on you.
Well, I've got internet and radio. I could listen to songs that.
Yeah, I mean, the only song. Yeah, I mean, there are very few songs that. Look, this is not a song I would go back to. It's like I'm not going to seek it out. I don't want to, and there's very little pop music that I do that too. But again, all of it is from the 60s or 70s. I can't think of a song in the 1980s that excites me other than, Tear Down This Wall by Pink Floyd. But
no, that's Reagan. You mean The Wall, not Tear Down the Wall.
Yeah, that's right. No, yeah. You're right. It's not Tear Down the Wall. It's just The Wall. By Pink Floyd. What else is in the 80s? Yeah, Blondie, I never let in, what can I say? Oh, there are a few. I think there might be something by U2, maybe. There's a song or two.
Bon Jovi, Iron Maiden. Come on.
Maiden, God help us. Yeah, I mean, my co-author, Don Watkins, and I have the exact opposite taste in popular music. So all the stuff that I really, really hate, he loves in terms of heavy metal. So it's not a killer not to agree on popular music. So
thanks again to Sosbot.
Yeah, and it's always good to create some disagreement between me and Nikos. So keep sending them over. Maybe let's have a 90s song just for, and maybe a 70s song just so, I'm curious to test Nikos out on some 70s music and see how
Led
he responds.
Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, and that's it. What else is there? Okay, and Pink Floyd, whatever, yeah.
God. All right.
But
Yeah.
Pink Floyd expand to 2 decades, so I wouldn't put them as 70s, yeah.
Oh, they're definitely 70s. They're definitely 70s.
Their best shows were in the 80s when they
No.
also had the.
No, the best songs I wish, from the Dark Side of the Moon and
No, I said the
Which-
best shows. The best shows when they became this.
shows, yes.
Yeah.
Shows. Yeah.
Speaking
Yes.
of music, when you find Yaron in a conference and it's like evening, tell him to tell you the story because now he says he doesn't like it in music. Tell him to tell you the story of Lady in Red. He said it in a conference, so it's public. So I'm not revealing.
Yeah.
anything.
So funnily enough, I became a huge Chris de Burgh fan in the 1980s. So that the one popular. I really became I had all his albums. I listened to all Chris de Burgh's music. And the funny thing was, years ago, about 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, Chris de Burgh came to Orange County, California, to do a concert. And I was like, I'd never seen him live. I was super excited. And so my wife and I, who was also a fan, we both went to see Chris de Burgh at this concert. And we parked the car and we're starting to walk towards the theater. And everybody around us is Iranian, Persian, everybody. We're like the only non-Iranians. It's like, what is going on here? And we go, and the entire auditorium is Iranians, Iranian Americans, Iranians who live in the United States. They came down from Los Angeles, and everybody, like we're the only non-Iranians pretty much in the whole place. So I asked somebody, what's going on? And they said, Chris de Burgh was huge in Iran. This was the underground music we were listening to in Iran in the 1980s. He was in the early 90s. He was the thing. He was the guy in Iran. So anyway, that's my Chris de Burgh story. But Lady in Red,
I wasn't referring to that story. I was referring to the driving with Boaz story because that was a
Yes.
nice story. But
yes,
ask him.
I've
ask him.
I've got lots of stories. So stories, we're not lacking in stories. So maybe one day we'll just do a show on Iran stories. All right, we've got the landmine story. We've got a bunch of stories. So, where are we? We are in the super chat section. So before we get to super chat, and Jennifer did ask the question we wanted. So we'll start with Jennifer, even though we've got some people who've given more money, but we'll get to them in a minute. But we'll start with Jennifer's question. But before that, I want to thank our sticker people. We always love the sticker people. So Barry, thank you. And Juan, this is his first super chat ever. At $20, really, really appreciate it, Juan. Thank you. NYK, Exit, selfie subscriber, $50. Thank you, selfie subscriber. Really appreciate that. Oh, what is going on? Wrong scrolling on the wrong place. Okay, we've got Cheryl and we've got Bonnie, 2 stickers from Bonnie, and then we've got Cook, and I think that captures everybody. Yes. All right, we got everybody. If I didn't get you, I apologize, and thank you. Generic thank you to sticker people. Really appreciate the support. Thank you, guys. Let's start with Jennifer, and then we'll go by. So Jennifer says, so why did Ayn Rand so oppose Reagan?
You answer that, and then I'll give my reply.
Yeah. So she thought that Reagan really pandered to the religious element within the Republican Party, and that in the 1980s election in particular, brought and rallied the religionists and brought them in and institutionalized them into the Republican Party. That was a main opposition. Part of that was his opposition in 1976 already to abortion, and the contrast between him and Ford, where he was anti-abortion and Ford was agnostic, or at least didn't make abortion an issue or ignored it, whereas Reagan made a big issue out of it. She also thought that the fact that he stood against Ford, that he should have just allowed Ford to run as the presumptive nominee, was disrespectful of Reagan and wrong. And then finally, if you look at her last, if you look at her last, speech, the sanction of the victim speech that he gives in New Orleans, one of the first questions that she's asked is about Ronald Reagan. And she gets, really fiery. I mean, she does not like Reagan. She is really, really, and she basically says, he gives a good speech and he doesn't act on it, which he says things, but he's not pro-capitalist. He doesn't know what it means and he doesn't act on it. He doesn't do it. He claims to be anti-Soviet, but he doesn't act on it. So she is very, very upset by the contradiction between, I think, what he's saying and what he's doing. And she thinks that is going to diminish the ability to defend capitalism, because capitalism will be associated with Reagan, that capitalism is now Reagan, and yet Reagan had big deficits, and Reagan continued spending on the welfare state, and Reagan raised taxes and Social Security. This is after she already had passed away, but she predicted that would happen in a sense, and that would be associated with capitalism. And she would rather have somebody like Ford, more mealy-mouthed, but who didn't present himself as "I'm for capitalism," and didn't live up to it. But then somebody who said, "I'm for capitalism, I am the epiphany of capitalism," and then didn't live up to it. And she thought that would taint capitalism for forever. So I think abortion, religion, and we could talk more about the bringing in of religion into the party. I think what happened once he became president is even more important than what happened before. And his being a pro-capitalist, but not actually living up to it, which she predicted.
Okay, so zero disagreement. All the things you said, all the things that Ayn Rand mentioned, all of these things are true. With one asterisk, that I think Ronald Reagan actually found the evangelicals in the Republican Party. He didn't bring them in. First of all, is it clear to everyone in the audience what we mean by evangelicals? It's not a category like Protestant or Catholic. It's mostly, think about it like a subcategory of Protestants, and it is based very much on the idea of a personal relationship with God, with a personal revelation, so to speak, with the idea of being born again, and with the idea that the Bible, this is like the more fundamentalist one, the Bible is to be taken seriously. Now, the evangelicals...
And you're supposed to evangelize. You're supposed to go out there, so very charismatic preachers, very, you're evangelizing. You're trying to grow this thing.
Yeah, if you want to get public speaking lessons, obviously go to Yaron, but also check people like James Robinson or Billy Graham and other evangelicals. They're very talented. Anyway, so already from the late 60s, for example, Reverend Billy Graham, which is one of the most famous ones, he was the pastor in Nixon's inauguration. So all this relationship starts building already from the late 60s. Keep in mind, this is the time where many conservative former Democrats from the South, because they're not happy with the civil rights movement, already move to the Republicans, and they bring with them their social conservative. And all of these people are more social conservative than whatever Reagan would later be. Obviously, you have Roe versus Wade, but this is not even the main thing. The main thing is...
They don't care that much about abortion in those days. In the early 70s, abortion is not a big deal for the evangelicals.
Which sounds crazy today, but that's how it is. The big thing is that in the early 70s, both Nixon and Carter, through the IRS, the tax authorities, go against Christian schools that continue to segregate. And they tell them, if you segregate, you are not a charity, therefore we reveal your charity status. This is what freaks out many evangelicals, and they leave Carter behind. Also, two more things as a proof. The Heritage Foundation, which was always, already from there, the flagship of conservatism, already from the late 1976, they have this idea that education needs to become more Christian. They have this, maybe today would call conspiracy theory of humanist education, that basically they say before it was cool that education makes kids woke and education needs to become Christian. All this happens before Reagan appears in the scene.
Yep.
And final claim. This is the percentages here of how evangelicals, the percentage of evangelicals that vote the Republicans. Something between 70 and 80% of evangelicals vote for Nixon. Here we don't have exact numbers. 76, someone would say only 50% vote for Ford. Yes, but this is because Carter, his main, is an evangelical.
Is one of them, yep.
Is one of them. Yep. So the change between Ford and with Reagan, it's 61%. So it's not such a big change. So you could see that compared to later, for example, Bush, you have 81%, Mitt Romney, 78%, Trump, 81%. And you mentioned abortion. Between 1980 and 1984, every evangelical, the most radical ones, are very pissed off with Reagan for one reason. Because his the first person who he puts on the Supreme Court is what's her name now? My mind is Nancy, the first woman who sat on the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and my mind is blank too.
Nancy.
I can see her face.
Sorry?
I can see her face.
Anyway, now I'm thinking
O'Connor.
So Sandra Day O'Connor. Yes,
Sandra Day O'Connor.
So before
Kubadaya.
Sandra Day O'Connor, I had in my mind the actress who plays in Notting Hill, which has a similar name. And now I can't remember her name either. Anyway, so before he puts her to the Supreme Court, they have a meeting. And Reagan asks her, what's your view on abortion? She says, as a woman, I don't like it. What's your view on Roe versus Wade? And she implies, look, I'm not going to challenge it. And Reagan says, okay, I will still nominate you on the court. Yep. And the whole of the evangelical community is up in arms. So my claim is that between 1980 and 1984, all these evangelicals vote for Reagan despite his abortion take, not because of his abortion take. And you can see this was a trend that was already there and it continues after Reagan. So all I'm saying is, of course, he sanctions them. He gave this famous speech, you cannot endorse me, but I endorse you. But this is a trend that started before Reagan, and I think Reagan actually delayed it. And particularly on abortion, again, this is an issue that caused him a lot of trouble with the evangelicals. So I would want to cut him a bit more slack in retrospect and knowing the whole trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, the people... A lot of it has to do with the fact that between 1980 and 1984, in spite of the abortion issue, he brought them into his administration in a way that they had never been before. They became active in the administration. They became public figures in the way they had never been before. Whether it was Falwell, I don't remember all the names. I remember this, I remember seeing them on television, and they now were a part of the DC establishment in a way that they had never been before. Again, 50% voted for Jimmy Carter. The reason they voted for Nixon in 68 and 72 is primarily to do, I think, with racial issues. So they were opposed to civil rights. And this was Nixon's Southern strategy. Nixon explicitly had a Southern strategy, going to the South, and not rejecting civil rights, but, I'm not the guy who passed it, so, and they fell for it. So he definitely had the Southern strategy, and he got it. They shifted to Jimmy Carter because they would discuss it ultimately with Nixon, partially because of his corruption and everything else. They're supposedly had high standards, and they went to Jimmy Carter because he was one of them, and he talked the talk, and then he betrayed them with the school issue, and they were probably going to go to the Republican Party anyway. But
Exactly.
that's
Exactly.
true. But what
Exactly.
Reagan did is he embraced them, which he didn't have to do, with the Ford wouldn't have done. I don't know about a Bush senior. It's hard to tell. I don't know what the alternatives were in '79, but it's not clear that the others would have embraced them in the way that Reagan did. I mean, I endorse you in the speech. It was more than that, right? It was that he brought them into Washington. He gave them positions, and he had the Republican platform rewritten. Let them write it on the social issues. They wrote the platform moving forward. So abortion, school prayer, family, the family, opposition to secular liberalism, all of that became part of the Republican platform. It hadn't been before, in ways that it hadn't been before. So he gave them institutional access. They were really there, and they never left. They never left Washington, D.C. They got established in D.C. They got connections in D.C. And they never left, and they've only grown stronger since then. And it's bewildering how they went from supporting Jimmy Carter to supporting, because of his character, I guess, to supporting Donald Trump. But that's a different show on the evolution of the. But Pat Robertson was everywhere and influential in ways that no evangelical had ever been politically influential before. Again, Jerry Falwell, Pat Robertson. I forget who the other guy. I mean, I have this picture of this sleazy guy, hair back.
Right, Jerry Falwell is probably.
No, a younger guy. Anyway, it
Oh,
doesn't
I
matter.
know who you mean. Black hair. Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, it's interesting, if some of our friends want to dive deeper into this rabbit hole, go and find what Falwell and the other people what do they say about Reagan in retrospect? They are not happy with him. They considered he betrayed them. So that's why I'm saying that there's a different reading of this gesture. But I think
it's the institutionalization of them. It's the legitimization of them in Washington, D.C., in the center of power, and giving them that access and giving them that credibility. That is what he did that I'm not sure other Republicans would have done.
Goldwater did not do this, for example.
No.
Explicitly did not. Although he was very socially conservative, he did not do that. He did
And
not
Nixon didn't do it, and Ford didn't do it, and Reagan did. And maybe it was time, and maybe it would have happened no matter what. But no, it wasn't Jim Baker. God, I don't know. Maybe I'm
Jim Baker. No, Jim Baker was a establishment guy, the establishment guy. He wasn't.
I can't remember. Tammy Faye. I remember Tammy Faye with that ridiculous hair, but that was hair in the '80s. Hair generally for women in the '80s was ridiculous. But all right, let's jump into super chats. It's getting late. All right, Wes, thank you, Wes. $200, really appreciate that.
Whoa, thank you very much.
He says extra money for the Superman reference from Nikos. What was the Superman reference?
Don't you remember when Superman was woke and for peace, and they threw all the 80s woke world peace type, and he threw all the nuclear, all the atomic
That's right,
bombs
into the space. That's right.
Yes.
Even though it's Superman 4, where he throws the nukes into the atmosphere.
Maybe 4.
Wes.
Yes.
Thank you, Wes. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, Molten Splendor for $100. Thank you, Molten.
Thank you.
You both are very intelligent and well-read. Your superpower of integration is amazing, and Nikos must have a photographic memory if he can instantly recall that Reagan had colon surgery on July 13th.
He had, and the reason I remember it, it's because on that day, I had my deep dive with my Patreon. By the way, it's a nice community. Everyone should join it. We had our deep dive in the day. I had to, you can't forget that. You can't forget that.
Impressive. Thanks, guys. Molten Splendor writes. Thank you, Molten Splendor. Really.
By the way, a date influenced by Nancy's astrologer. always Nancy's astrologer should give the
Yeah.
green light on when important things should happen.
Just bizarre. We didn't mention, we mentioned it before the show, I mentioned it too. But Reagan gives a great speech on immigration as basically his final speech, I think, formally as president. He gives a great speech on immigration. And just to give you the difference in sense of life between pretty much any Republican today, doesn't matter who, and Ronald Reagan, just listen to Reagan's speech on immigration. It is so benevolent. It is so positive. I'm willing to forgive him, particularly given what we have today, for a lot of the bad stuff he did just for that speech, because it was so amazing.
And let me suggest also one speech. I came across it first time and it took me half an hour to pull myself together emotionally. The speech he gives after the Challenger disaster.
Yeah.
It's
That was a
as if
beautiful
it comes, it's as if it's an interstellar monologue. I tweeted about it the other day, but go find the actual talk. It's like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. He had a speechwriter for that. As
He had a
opposed to
speechwriter for most of the stuff.
Yeah,
But you
but
choose the
still.
speechwriter and you edit the speechwriter and you choose what to use and what not to use.
Exactly.
So I forget who the speechwriters were, but they were well known. They became later on well-known people in the Republican Party.
And some of them women, which was not usual back then.
Oh yeah, what's her name? Who writes for the Wall Street Journal now regularly?
I couldn't remember Sandra Day O'Connor. I won't remember the
Yeah, so she writes a weekly column for the Wall Street Journal even today. So she was one of his speechwriters, and she's a good writer. I don't agree with a lot of what she says, but she's a good writer. All right, Wes says, go into more detail on the mysticism in the Reagan administration.
Okay, so he loved Nancy a lot. They're one of the most interesting, I wouldn't say power couples, that's not nice. Interesting couples in political history. So a few weeks actually in his presidency, there is a terrorist attack against Reagan by a crazy guy who wants to impress Jane Fonda. After that, Nancy becomes absolutely freaked out and she worries a lot about Reagan. So part of that desperation that this is going to happen again, she starts trying to find ways to protect him. And one of the ways she finds to protect him is through the astrologer. And this became also well known back then, so it became a liability for the administration. But because Reagan loved her a lot and he understood that it was concern, he let her go with it. So she was the more mystical one, let's say, rather than Reagan was religious, but and actually his views on sex and religion way more progressive than the average Republican, the average conservative back then. He said you could have sex with more than one person, and actually you could marry more than once, and it's not against God's.
He was the governor when California passed the no-fault divorce bill in California. So, yep, which conservatives today want to fight against. So conservatives today want to reinstate, difficult, making it very, very hard to get divorced.
Of course, because divorce is way more prominent in the Bible than abortion. So I'm surprised they haven't already gone down that path. Probably they haven't, because many of them are divorced. So yeah.
Well, there's a conflict even in early Christianity about divorce, but that's for another time, I think. Let's see, where did I want to go? Hopefully, Wes, that answered your question. Christian asked, he's not here on the show now, but he'll listen later. He says, I think Reagan was very wrong on 3 topics: abortion rights, radical Islam. He saw the Afghan Mujahideen as an ally. He also sold weapons to the Islamic Republic of Iran, yes. And 3, bringing religion into the politics of the GOP.
We covered all 3. Just again, to cut him a bit slack. Back then, in 1981, we don't know about radical Islam what we know today.
Yep.
You have to be very much immersed and to have a big picture to understand these things. Reagan was in many ways a simpleton. He had a very simple worldview. The main villain is Soviet Union.
Communism.
We win, they lose. This is his big geopolitical prism through which he views the world.
What did Do you know anything about his relationship with China? I don't remember anything in
Well,
terms of what,
this is a very quiet time with China. Not much is happening
Yeah.
with China.
Deng,
So
Deng
it's
is,
yeah.
so Deng doesn't come to Washington. There's no, I don't think he does. Reagan doesn't go to Beijing.
I
I don't
don't think he
think so.
goes to Beijing. He gives a talk. He gives a talk in Moscow under Lenin's thing, under Lenin's portrait, and he's not afraid to talk about freedom and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But our friend should know that we've covered all of these things.
Yep.
So the first big super chat was about religion.
Yep.
Go find that part where we talk about after Soviet Union. We talk about
You'll hear the
Islam.
whole show and you'll hear all that. So
Yeah,
you
you'll hear
cover
all that. Yeah.
All right, Mary Eileen says, Nikos, I would love to hear what you thought about the Odyssey. I'm seeing it on Monday. No worries about spoilers.
Well, the spoiler is it's out there for 3,000 years.
Yeah.
So first of all, Marilyn, one more thing. Marilyn kept asking in various other occasions. She found off-putting that Reagan used the term "I happen to believe," and she found something non-free will in that. Keep in mind, Reagan would use the same phrases, or if he heard the phrase in a, so I don't think there's some epistemological something behind that. Now, again, he wasn't a giant of the intellect, so I'm not sure.
He was not.
My message is forget everything you've heard about the Odyssey from imbecile right-wing influencers on Twitter. It's not going to turn you
Many of whom have gone to see it and actually like it.
yeah, it's not going to turn you transgender or gay or I don't know what they are afraid is going to happen. And the most important thing, trust Nolan, the guy who has given us Interstellar, the guy who has given us the Batman trilogy, the guy who gave us Oppenheimer, although that's a bit morally gray, trust him. Or at least give him the benefit of the doubt. Go and watch it, and that's
He's
before
an
you.
extraordinary filmmaker. He doesn't always have a clear message. Philosophically, he's shady, but he's mixed. But he knows how to make films. He knows how to create drama. He knows how to suck you into a story. I think the biggest criticism that I find ridiculous about the Odyssey is it's not true to the original, but no remake is. Right? I mean, that's the nature of remaking stuff. I mean, Shakespeare's plays are all based on other plays, and they're different than the other plays. That's what makes them Shakespeare. But every time somebody redoes something in a new medium, it's going to be different. It's going to be very different. So, I mean, would Homer be insulted by somebody 3,000, no, 4,000, whatever, years later, changing stuff?
But it's a bit more, so it's not where I think this is a more important topic. Because, for example, you have accounts like End Wokeness that they actually, without having watched the film, they produced all these lies that Achilles is playing by a transgender, which is a lie.
It's not true.
And this got 5 million views. And then Elon Musk promotes this. This is the same rubbish, the same poison that we watch in the World Cup. Fake photos. Oh, Messi should get a red card. It's rigged for Argentina. It's serious. It's serious that when you have all this rubbish before, or they had this idea that they redid the part where the Odyssey, where Achilles was transgender because of the backlash. Like what? They brought back all. It's not like, what do they think? They brought back all the actors and they went back to wherever they should. They said, okay, we're gonna do it again, but now you transgender person, you're not Achilles, you're someone else. Like, how stupid have you to believe that? So go and watch it, enjoy it, and trust Nolan that he's better than what these imbeciles would have you believe.
Absolutely. I never doubted that we should go and watch it.
Also,
how good it is, I don't know because I haven't seen it yet, but there was never any doubt in my mind that I would go watch it.
Also, I'll just say one thing, Agamemnon. Those who've watched it, you know what I'm talking about. Agamemnon.
All right. Knowing how often Trump changes his mind, I don't see any advantage in buying advance notice on his post on Truth Social. In fact, investing on his information would be risky knowing how often Trump vacillates. No, you're missing the whole point. The whole point is on every vacillation, you can trade and make money. So when he says X, let's say he says something that's going to cause oil prices to go down up, and 10 minutes before he's going to say it, you buy. And then as soon as it goes up, you sell because he's going to vacillate. And then you wait. And then as soon as he says something that's going to cause all prices to go down, you short oil. And then as soon as that's over, you get out. So no, the fact that he vacillates creates more profit opportunities to trade on inside information than if he didn't vacillate. Now, you might say, yeah, but the market gets it that he's going to vacillate so it doesn't respond. But that's empirically not true. The fact is that the market responds to everything he says in very predictable ways. Oh, there's a ceasefire with Iran. Oil goes down. No, we're going to bomb Iran. Oil goes up. So, you know, huge opportunities. I wish if I had that inside information and wouldn't get caught, I would get caught. That's the problem. But if I wouldn't get, I'd be a billionaire right now, easily a billionaire. It's so easy to make money off of this. And you know, he did this with the tariffs. Every day vacillated. Every time you vacillate, if you have 5 minutes early information, you make a killing, and you can make a killing over and over and over and over again because you vacillate so much.
And to relate the two questions, as I wrote earlier on Twitter, if I were a billionaire, I would all day harass Nolan, do Atlas Shrugged trilogy. I'm covering everything, open budget, white, blank check. Just do the trilogy.
He wouldn't do it. He would. There's no way he does it. Because it would require him to take a real stand on something real in a way that I don't think he would.
Anyway,
he comes the closest in the Batman trilogy, and even then, he doesn't ultimately, you know, go through with it. But he comes close.
Okay.
I mean, he would make a great movie, but I don't think he would do it. I don't think he would do it. Mary Eileen, why did Ayn Rand think Reagan was a net negative? Why does Yaron think he's net negative while Nikos thinks he's net positive? I think we've covered that, Mary Eileen.
We've covered it. I think he's a net positive because he was the last intellectual firebrand president in history. Actually, he was the last intellectually firebrand persona of that level of influence, I would say. I can't think of a pro-freedom influencer, would say, today after Reagan that had such a big audience and such an appeal and would be so openly pro-freedom and America and capitalism.
Yeah, I worry about the long-term impact he had on the Republican Party and the consequence. I think Nikos's retort to that is it would have happened anyway, and it's quite possible it would have. Jennifer,
just bringing my charger, I can still hear you.
Okay, why did you not like the movie Breakfast Club? I saw it when I was young, and I thought it meant to be true to yourself and not be fake. God, I can't remember.
The characters are so annoying. They're such like self-righteous in this annoying. Like I'm a teen rebellious and I rebel against the world of the grown-ups. But the whole movie, there's
no positive values. It's just a rebellion, but it's not even that interesting, and it's boring. I found it boring. Right? Nothing happens really,
except in the last second when the guy does this and the song starts playing.
Yeah,
that's worth your whole 90 minutes of the movie.
I watched it 40 years ago, so what do I barely remember, you know, what happened. So I'd have to watch it again. Maybe Shazbot will pass to review it, and then I'll give you an opinion, a more educated opinion. Fizzled says, I love everything both of you are doing. Keep up the good work. Hopefully one day people will shed their political tribalism and embrace a moral objectivist philosophy. That would be amazing.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Shruti says, just sending in my appreciation for the Yaron and Nikos Dialogues. Thank you, Shruti. Really appreciate it. Michael, sorry I came late. Would you say the country and the GOP were far healthier and optimistic during Reagan's time than now?
Reagan himself was, the party was not, and that's why I gave the context the previous 20 years, because the country was going down the drain. So in that way he was, but think also how he changed the whole, or how he influenced the whole culture. 80s was positive individually. Think about the TV series. Usually there's a lone hero who stands for values and does very cool things. Think of Knight Rider, or even think of Rambo, for example, or this type of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's a superficial individualism that spreads in America in the 1980s. That generation is called the me generation. Remember, these are the hippies from the 60s who are now working on Wall Street and making gazillions of dollars. But it's called the me generation. There's a lot of movies about Wall Street and some of them are actually semi-positive. There's definitely, Silicon Valley is blowing up. There is a positive attitude in the U.S. Now, how much of that is Reagan is hard to tell. Part of it was building up anyway. But it's a backlash to 70s. It's a backlash to 60s. And it has momentum. It takes, I think, the country all the way to 9/11. I think 9/11 is the turning point. But it really is this positive momentum. Reagan gives it voice, right? Now, how much he is the cause or how much he's just voicing what's happening around him in the country, it's a bit of both, I think. I think the Republican Party's healthier because it still has the free market people around. So Reagan brings those free market people in, and they're in his cabinet and they're around, they're hanging out, right, in Washington. It's just like the religionist. But he also brings in the religionist. And now you've got in Washington, D.C., the religionists and the free market guys. And what actually happens is the free market guys get marginalized and the religionists get the upper hand over time. And we're seeing, and the manifestation of that really is, a compassionate conservatism, which is what Bush Jr. runs on, and then Donald Trump, right? I mean, the current Republican Party.
Just quick note, though, the opponent of Reagan in the primaries was George Bush Sr., who called his free market economics voodoo-nomics. So
yep. Voodoo economics.
Voodoo economics,
and
yeah.
he became president because Reagan chose him as vice president. So again,
Which was a weird story. It was the convention. He literally had to find someone. There was this crazy idea, the super ticket, how it was called, that Ford, the previous president, would be the vice president, but then he wanted to bring with him Kissinger. So thank God they let this. Although actually, I'm not sure it would be that worse.
I don't know with the Middle East, but yeah, I mean, Bush was the worst choice you could make because Bush was the mealy-mouthed, weak, pathetic, compromise on everything Republican Party. And that contrasted with the principled in quotation marks, of the religious right, further strengthened the religious right in contrast to Bush, because Bush was a nothing. So yeah. All right, now to average algorithm. Reagan was Reagan 10 times better than Trump or 100 times better than Trump? I mean, look,
10,000.
Yeah, 10,000. It's night and day. It's not on the same. I mean, Trump is a massive negative. Massive negative. So, Reagan is a slight positive maybe, or a slight negative maybe in comparison. Now, you could argue that again, what Reagan did led to Trump, but we were heading probably in this direction anyway.
Just notice people who want to make this comparison. There are many common characteristics. So, for example, Reagan is not a giant of the intellect. Reagan has a low attention span. Reagan, whatever you whisper last in his ear, this is what sticks. But the two big differences is that, number one, Reagan is a more decent human being. And number two, he has some principles, simple ones, but he sticks with them. And when he deviates from them, he's conscious that he deviates from them. So for a long time, he resists the raising tax, he resists the deficit, and then he realizes, but at least he feels this gravitas that I went back on my word and this is something serious and this is not cool at all.
Yep.
And also he's very good with his people. He doesn't want to fire anyone, and he's completely different from Trump.
Now, Travis Youngman, did you see Ben Shapiro go after J.D. Vance's anti-capitalist rhetoric on Joe Rogan the young people on the right don't want Shapiro or Reagan optimism. They want nihilistic racism. I think that's right. And I did see Ben Shapiro. I mean, look, J.D. Vance also went after Israel and had a conspiracy about Epstein and the Mossad. And so he pissed off Ben Shapiro on a lot of different fronts, but he also got him on capitalism. So good for Ben Shapiro for standing up against J.D. Vance on capitalism. Yeah, I mean, Ben Shapiro is very mixed, but better than some of the people who work for Ben Shapiro, like Knowles and Walsh and those other guys.
Actually, yeah, I don't know that you mentioned it. How about, first of all, let's tell people that next week you're gonna be on the go.
Yeah, so no show next Sunday, but the week after that.
Week after that, we have a show related to the new right, because we're going to talk about Franco and the Spanish Civil War. But the week after, do you want to do? So J.D. Vance went in Rogan, went in the other big entrepreneur podcast, and also he released a book. Do you want 3 weeks from now to do the worldview of J.D. Vance, the book and the 2 big podcasts?
Sure. I'm not going to read the book, so I assume you're going to read the book.
Yes.
I read a lot of his other essays and his autobiographical essay where he talks about how he came to where he is today.
The book is out, though, right?
What's that?
Is the book out?
Yes, book is out.
Okay.
Communion.
Yeah, I know, but if it's,
I'm pretty sure it's out. It's on Amazon for sale, not pre-order.
Yes, it's out. It's out. Yes. Okay.
All
yeah.
right, let's do J.D. Vance's world, whatever. Yeah, we'll do that the week after that. That's good.
Okay, good.
That's a good one. I think we'll get a lot of traction on that. All right. Thank you, Not You Have a Juggle with them. Okay, let's run through some of these. Christian, Nikos, do you like the short AI videos with Messi, Milei, and you?
What? There's a short video with Messi, Milei, and me. Where is this thing and why haven't I seen it?
Okay, Christian, send it to Nikos. He hasn't seen it.
Since you mentioned Milei and Messi, just to remind people, we're 90 minutes away from my prophecy coming to life, which is Argentina will win. Milei is going to give the show of a lifetime. Messi is going to be drunk from the whole situation. He's going to start repeating Milei lines like Viva la libertad, carajo. People are going to have a new interest in the ideas of freedom, and a second renaissance is going to begin, all with Argentina winning tomorrow. So 90 minutes away from my prophecy.
90 minutes. Why 90?
That's how long a game lasts.
Yeah, but that's tomorrow. That's 24 hours.
Yeah,
tomorrow.
that's what I mean. Yeah, whatever. Yeah,
we're 24 hours plus 90 minutes away.
24. Yeah.
Okay.
No, by this time, if it finishes in 90 minutes, the game will be over.
Yep. It starts at 5 my time, not 3. It starts now. Tomorrow.
No. Today, the third place game starts now. Tomorrow, the final starts 2 hours before.
Oh, really?
Now. Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay. All right, send us this video. I haven't seen the video of Messi and Nikos playing football with Milei. That would be interesting. All right, Christian, with all
I had a dream. I had a dream with Milei the other day, by the way. More on that. I don't remember much anyway, but yeah.
Right. With all due respect to the GOAT, Lionel Messi, he should have gotten a red card against Algeria.
Okay.
He was lucky there. Be honest about it, Nikos.
Okay. So here's the good thing, people. How is this line in Big Lebowski? This is not Nam Smoky. There are rules here. So there's a website, it's called IFAB, where it has rules. So go IFAB, put red card, and you will see there that it says a red card is a tackle or challenge that endangers the safety of an opponent or uses excessive force or brutality. Are you seriously telling me that Messi endangered the safety of an opponent or used excessive force or brutality? Fact. Maybe yellow card, yes, but not in a million red card. Also, there are 5 similar occasions in the World Cup. There was no red card. Olise did it in the semi-final with France. Nothing happened. So no red card.
Michael, Is Argentina doing well in the World Cup because Milei's free market reforms have given its players more access to better food and the overall optimism of the Argentinian people because of Milei?
The previous three World Cups of Argentina was the first under a military dictatorship in 78, Videla. In 1986, it was probably some Peronist
Yep.
third worldist socialist program. And 2022, Milei had not won yet. So, but I love the sentiment. So I want to say yes, but the truth is no.
And 1970, Brazil won under military dictatorship. So there doesn't seem to be a correlation, particularly in South America, between winning the World Cup and political freedom and political liberty.
I still remember the episode we did in the Ayn Rand Institute on Milei. My opening little monologue was 360 something days after Leo Messi left the World Cup, Argentina is again in the headlines of the world, and I have the smile till here. Not everyone was as excited with Milei, but that's okay.
I was excited by Milei. Christian, the Spanish play like cold robots. The Spanish play like cold robots, brutally efficient.
Yeah.
Got only one goal in 7 games. How does Argentina even stand a chance against them in the final?
The most important is not that Spain has only conceded one goal, because maybe this will mean they're lucky. They have not allowed the opposition to threaten them. So this one goal is statistically, it's not like, if I knew how to stop Spain, I would be in New York talking to Scaloni. But for people who will watch the game, just pay attention to this. Spain is such a beautiful, pay attention how when they move the ball and when the players without the ball move, they try to create spaces. Create a bit space, gain a bit of ground, more space. It's all a game of how do we liberate space, either with the ball or without the ball. And then when they find the crack in the defense, that's where the talent in dribbling and all that stuff comes. How do you stop this? It's not easy. And the most difficult thing for Argentina, how do you put Messi in the areas where he can really threaten? How do you dominate towards the box of Spain? I'm not very optimistic, people. I'm not very, as Argentina fan, I'm not optimistic. If Spain wins, they deserve it 100%. They're the best team as opposed to players. The best players were France. The best team is Spain.
Yep. Roman, do you think the emphasis on duty in the military is wrong?
It depends what we mean by duty. So in the military, this internal, let's say, how to put it, this internal culture can be a force of positive. And usually when they say duty, they mean things like integrity, things like being true to your word. So in the army, I found this whole idea of service and duty within that subculture, particularly if you have chosen it. So if you're in a voluntary corps, then it makes sense. It makes sense within this subculture because it tends to mean something else from what we have in mind.
I think you'd really have to if in a different culture, in an objectivist culture, yeah, you would talk differently in the military. The military would be structured different. People would be motivated by different things, and you would motivate the troops on the ground in different way. But it's impossible to bring an alien culture into the military that is different than the culture around it. So you're not going to get away from the collectivism and altruism when you go into the military, and they just use it effectively in order to achieve their aims. Good militaries know how to balance that with allowing individuals the initiative and the thought to actually be able to win. And the Israeli military is particularly good at that. The American military is usually good at that.
It's people who want to understand this more. Go and read Jocko Willink's Extreme Ownership, How Navy SEALs Lead and Win. The biggest revelation you'll get from the book is that these are not robots who follow orders. It's the opposite. It's people who have to develop a lot of independent thinking.
And that's the SEALs. The question is how much of that is exported into the rest of the military. In Israel, I think it's much more widespread. In America, probably less widespread.
In Greece,
yeah,
it's close to zero, except
zero.
in the special forces,
Yes.
but in the infantry, it's close to zero. Even
Shazwat
unfortunately
says,
among the officers.
yeah, I don't understand what Shazwat is saying, so maybe you do, Nikos. Nikos, are you an urban achiever?
I have absolutely zero idea what this means, but because you're such a loyal fan, Sosbot, if you want to send even a free, if Yaron can read it,
Yep. Just put it
explaining what this
on the
means.
chat, an explanation. I will convey it.
Because I'm neither urban, I hope I am an achiever, but not urban. I live in the middle of, outside of a town.
Mario, I would be interested in your thoughts on the connection between sports and art.
That's for you. Actually, I'll give a short intro before we go to the expert. I'll just say this. The experience I had watching the 30 minutes of Messi the other day, the closest thing I can get is when I rewatched Interstellar in IMAX some months ago. That it was something like a religious, like what am I experiencing here? What is this thing I'm witnessing? So in my mind, there is a connection.
So there's no question, that sports can, in moments, give you an idealized version of something, right? Competence and efficaciousness in a concrete, right? But the fundamental difference between sports and art is that in sport there's a lot of accident, right? In sport, nobody's controlling it. In art, good art, everything is thought out in advance. Everything has a purpose. So I don't know, Messi's misses, bad passes, right? Those don't give you that same feeling. So, it's the moments where everything clicks. But the whole idea of art is it's purposeful. If he misses, there's a purpose to the misses. If he's being brilliant, there's a purpose to the brilliance, right? So it's all, it's all orchestrated, right? Sport there's too much accident in it to serve the same thing as art does. But there's no question, when you see somebody in any activity, in any human activity, execute brilliantly, execute better than anybody else, better than you've ever seen, that can have a profound impact on you. That can really impress you. That has an almost metaphysical, but it's not metaphysical because you can't replay it over and over. It won't happen the next time exactly the same. There's an element of it's not in and of itself a concretization of anything. But when you see it, yeah, I mean, but that's true of there's a scene in The Fountainhead where Dominique is watching Rourke work, and she's just in awe. She's sitting there like she's looking at Michelangelo's David. Here is the idealized, and he's working. He's just working. He's not. So you can get that aesthetic experience from moments in life, extraordinary moments in life. You don't get it. It has to be extraordinary. You see somebody doing something extraordinary, and that has that same aesthetic, I think, impact. They're conveying a metaphysical truth to you. And that's what art does. And that's what Messi can do in a moment of brilliance. That's what Rourke can do in working on his architecture. That's what, somebody doing something extraordinary can convey.
Excellent.
Wizzle or something. Campaign 80. Which message will resonate with voters?
That's a meme, by the way, for the uninitiated.
Campaign 80 is?
No. What message? Anyway, sorry, continue.
Which message will resonate with voters? let's talk better mileage versus kill the bastards. Do you understand this?
Yeah, this is a meme where they oversimplify to the elections, various elections. They oversimplify the two sides. Actually, I don't think Reagan's was kill the bastards, but yeah.
No.
Anyway,
He was, don't ask what the government can do for, no, it was, what do you call it?
in the inaugural address, he said that the government is not the solution; the government is the problem. Again, try to
Yes.
think. A president of the United States says this in his inaugural address.
And he did, that was reflected in his campaign, I think, that attitude. Oyvind says, saw the Odyssey, got me thinking how easy it was to observe yesterday's heroes and what made them real-time heroes. They seem to be a visibility issue of what makes the producer. I think this is a part of why they are viewed with such suspicion, as what they do are so private. Do you think there is anything to this?
I think what you're trying to say is that in the Odyssey, we see the heroes with a bit more, their struggles as more universal struggles, their internal struggles, the urge to go home. I think this is what makes the Odyssey impactful. I mean, the film, not. And some people say, yeah, but where is Odysseus' trickstery? Well, Nolan focused on something else, and again, it is not Homer's Odyssey. It is Nolan's interpretation of Odyssey, and he focuses on that, and that's okay. And as you said, it's way more relatable. Like, what did you expect to see? Monsters and how he kills the monsters? That would be the Godzilla movie, not the Odyssey.
When was the last time you saw a movie that was exactly the same as the book? I mean, it's always going to be an interpretation of it. And the question is it enjoyable? Is it valuable? Or isn't it valuable? Not, constantly comparing it to the novel.
But I'm laughing because I'm thinking many of the people who don't like Odyssey, they loved the movie 300. And I love the movie 300. I watch it once every year. But this is like, if Leonidas in real life was 60 years old, if you think that Gerald Butler was Leonidas, not to mention of everything else in the movie, so no, don't expect accuracy.
And the 300 is beyond inaccurate. It has nothing to do with the history.
Yeah. And there were not 300, there were way more.
Exactly.
But
and it has nothing to do with the history.
I don't want to spoil this beautiful
And the Persians don't have monsters. So
there are stories that they would bring elephants and stuff, but
yeah, but this was beyond elephants. This was in the movie, right? Yeah. Anyway, I'm not a huge fan of the 300, but partially because I can't think of the Spartans as good guys. Let's see.
Anyone could leave Sparta practically. Like if you could escape Sparta. So most of the people there, in some way, everything they went through was voluntary. In some way, at some level. I mean, the freemen, not the slaves.
Something being voluntary doesn't make it good. So,
okay, sure.
I get it, and I get the heroism of whatever happened.
I mean, it was no Soviet Union, because many people say Sparta was Soviet Union. No, it was not Soviet Union.
Because you could leave.
Yeah.
Yes. I wanted to say something about this question. Yeah, I mean, a big part of, I think what you're saying is the producer generally does something that most people don't understand, don't know, don't understand, have no appreciation. It's why in our culture, it's okay to make money as a basketball player. It's okay to make money as an actor because people can relate to that. They can understand it. They somewhat understand it. They have no clue what a CEO does. They have no clue what a founder does, what an entrepreneur does. They in economics, people have a zero-sum view of the world. In economics, people have a materialistic view of the world, a kind of a soft Marxist view of the world. The workers, they're the ones who produce. They don't understand. They have no conception of the pyramid of ability, and that I think is the big. So when it comes to physical heroism, people get it. When it comes to heroism of the spirit or heroism of the mind, people have a much harder time understanding that, and they get simple values. And Homer, in the end, is simple values: family, home. But they don't get. I mean, one of my favorite movies, if I'm allowed to say, is This Land Is Mine, which everybody should watch. I think it's one of the great movies, and it's an example of a completely unexpected hero and a heroism of the spirit, heroism of the mind in the face of the Nazis. So there's an element of physicality because he's going to be killed, but it's with Charles Lawton and I think Maureen O'Hara, and it was made by Jean Renoir during the Second World War. So it was a propaganda movie, and I think it's black and white. It's just a great movie. This Land Is Mine. Check if you can find it. It's very hard to find. If you can find it, check it out. All right, Ron. In terms of football ability, compare Ronaldinho at his prime to Messi.
First of all, Ronaldinho's prime was like 3 years, because after that he decided that life's about partying, eating, and other things. So look, people, so that whenever you want to compare Messi with anyone, think about it this way. Messi is world class in scoring, dribbling, creating, assisting, and playmaking. Ronaldinho was very good in creating and in dribbling, though not at the level of Messi. But that was it. He was not as good a scorer as Messi. And again, his prime was practically from 4 or 5 years. He played his last World Cup when he was 27, for God's sake. So we'll never know, but whatever we saw, he's not even in the same category with Messi. No one is in the same category with Messi, maybe except from Maradona and Pelé, although we haven't watched much of Pelé. Not Ronaldinho, though. Already in his last season in Barcelona, Messi is a bigger impact than Ronaldinho, although Messi is like, 17 back then.
Yeah, I mean, Pelé was astounding for the era, and also he peaked very young, and it's a different world, right? I mean, you didn't play in your 30s.
The main thing
29, you were finished, right? I mean, it was very rare for players in those days to play well into their 30s. The conditioning was different, everything was different. But when you watch him dribbling in the late 50s, in the 60s, I mean, he was phenomenal. And his goal scoring ability was phenomenal. But yeah, I mean, Messi, if you think about his career, you think about everything he's done and his sheer skill, yeah, I don't think there's anybody matches him.
And Pelé, when he did these things, he hadn't seen anyone else do it. He had to come up with the idea of the bicycle kick.
Yeah. He was inventing much of the game.
Exactly.
And again, he played. The other thing is he played in Brazil. He played in Brazil for a team in Brazil. He didn't go to Europe.
He played for Santos. Yeah, he only played exhibitions games in Europe, so we didn't see him in Europe. But I think Pelé today, as he was, he could stand today. As you pick him up from as he was and you put him today, he would be top class.
Yeah. All right. Roland says, growing up in 1980s Hungary, Ronald Reagan was my first image of a hero.
Wow.
Based just on the off-field voices, the news announcers of the party state media were talking about him.
First of all, you mentioned voice. He had this very rare thing. He had what I call a smoker voice, although he never smoked. He had this tone, the voice, this depth. He had the perfect voice for TV, the perfect voice for radio, the perfect voice to tell you it's going to be all right, and the perfect voice to tell you we are good and we're going to make it.
Yep. All right. Enric says, Yaron, what's your 3 favorite 60s, 70s songs? God. I mean, I don't hold those categories in my mind, and I don't hold the list of songs in my mind. But if I had to do it from 60s, 70s, I'd probably pick Pink Floyd's "Wish You Were There," which I love. I just love the melody. What's that?
Wish you were here, not there.
Wish you were here. Yes, wish you were here. I'd pick somebody from Simon and Garfunkel. I'd have to figure out which song because there were a number to compete. I also like Paul Simon when he went on by himself, and maybe something from Bob Dylan, and partially because those songs connected with me when I was a teenager. So, I mean, each one of those songs, I can remember me at a particular point as a teenager with particular angst, listening to those songs and the impact they had on me. And I think that's why we connect to music from our teenage years, because they leave a memory, they leave something. But I'm sure you could add, if I remembered other songs, if you brought but there's that and there's that, there's just a bunch of there's a lot of good stuff.
In the 60s, I would also add the Doors to my
The
favorite.
Doors,
Yeah.
Doors were good. America in the 1970s. I went through a Janis Ian phase, if anybody remembers Janis Ian. So you're smiling like you vaguely remember, but
Not very Yaron like.
no, but you're teenage angst. Very Janis Ian, very teenage angst. At 17, I learned the truth, So it's. Are you thinking of Joel Osteen as the slimy guy? No. I mean, Joel Osteen is a slimy guy, but I'm not thinking of him as the guy. At some point I'll remember, but I don't know. Conservative columnist Peggy Noonan. Yes, Peggy Noonan was one of Reagan's speechwriters. And she writes today a column in the Wall Street Journal on a monthly basis. Thank you, Mary Arlene. You're absolutely right.
Many thanks, yeah.
Christopher says, is Odysseus's reasoning mind glorified?
Not particularly, but
Is it in
moral.
Homer?
Sorry?
Is it in Homer?
Well, in Homer, it's more the trickster rather than the
Trickster,
rational thinker. But if you are to come up with the Trojan horse idea, also you have to be clever. But in Nolan, it's mostly his moral compass and how he views his life and what he did, what actually happened in Troy. I will not give other spoilers.
So, do you care about the game being played right now?
I care that no one from France scores or assists so that Messi ends up first scorer and first in assists.
Do you want to know what the score is?
Yes.
3-0 England.
What? 37 minutes in? Okay.
And
then
we're missing this.
Well, no one ever watches third games. I would only watch it if it was Messi's last game, but luckily that's tomorrow.
All right, let's go through these because I have to go to dinner. All right, Michael, if Jimmy Carter had won that second term, would we have iPhones today? We needed the free market push Reagan provided to create Silicon Valley. You forget that almost all the deregulation that happened, the big ones, trucking, airlines, railroads, and significant finance, happened under Jimmy Carter. Started under Ford, accelerated under Jimmy Carter, was legislation, so you can't reverse it by changing the head of the regulatory agency. That was the major achievement in deregulation happened under Jimmy Carter. So who knows what another 4 years of Jimmy Carter would have happened? I don't know, right? It's impossible to say, but in terms of liberating the entrepreneur, Jimmy Carter had a big role in it. But the spirit would have been lacking. So I don't know where you would have gotten that. So, and how do you evaluate that? Volcker would have done the same. You would have had a recession in 81. You would have had a recovery in 82. But I don't know because Reagan's spirit would have been missing. And it's hard to tell what exactly that role that plays. All right, Michael says $50. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Do New York and California do well because despite their controls, they're taxing and regulating smart, educated, and motivated people, whereas Alabama and Mississippi are taxed and regulated less. The population is still low quality.
Well, it's also where the hubs are. It's also a cultural thing, historical thing.
Yeah, there's a huge advantage for New York being New York because it already has a massive network effect around finance and everything else. If you started New York from scratch, could it evolve in New York today? No. California has two network effects, one in Silicon Valley and one in Hollywood, that are huge. And you've got another one on biotech in San Diego, arguably. So there's history, but part of it is education. Look, the best universities in the world are in California and to some extent in New York. Just in New York, you've got Columbia and you've got New York City, NYU. Now, we know Columbia and NYU for all the garbage that the woke people have, but they have engineering, they have science, and they've got a lot of good people who teach there, and a lot of smart students go there. You've also got just the excitement of living in New York. Who the hell wants to live in Alabama? I mean, I know Nikos likes to live in a remote place, but New York is where stuff is happening. Ambitious people who want to build and create stuff want to be in New York. They want to be in Silicon Valley. They don't want to be in the middle of nowhere. It's part of how they got the network effect, is people gravitate towards where the action is. So there's a lot of factors. Yeah, I mean, there are not a lot of good universities in Alabama and Mississippi. There is, so you don't have as many educated people. You don't have as many engineers. Although Mississippi has some of the best education right now, primary care, early grades and high school. Mississippi's really turned things around. So maybe that'll change in the future about Mississippi. But again, I mean, nobody's going to be excited about going to start a startup in Mississippi. And what engineers are you going to hire? So there's a reason why these hubs come together, and it's very difficult to replicate them. And you can tax and regulate these guys a lot, but the benefits of the hub, the benefits of the networking effect are so high, so large that it's very difficult to destroy a Silicon Valley. I mean, California's trying. They're making every effort in the world to destroy Silicon Valley, and Silicon Valley is still chugging along. All right, Shazbat says, Little Lebowski, urban achiever. Do you understand that?
Big Lebowski. Yeah, it's probably a Big Lebowski reference that I'm missing. By the way, yes, I cannot tell people give money so that we do movie reviews, but people give money so that we do movie reviews. It's one of my favorite things.
Yeah,
and I don't have any platform to do it or any excuse to do it.
What's the movie called with the Big Lebowski?
Big Lebowski.
Which has who's in it?
Jeff Bridges. You haven't watched Big Lebowski.
I hate that movie. It's one of my least favorite movies ever. So
it has some of the most immortal lines.
You're entering yes, some of the most immortal lines for losers. Yes, it's a loser movie. It's a pothead movie about losers who do nothing, and in the end are still losers. Nothing really happens.
Okay, that's the shortest movie. That you should make a short clip of it. 5 seconds review of the Big Lebowski.
That is my review of the Big Lebowski. And I love Coen Brothers movies. Generally, I'm a huge Coen Brothers fan. That is my least favorite Coen Brothers movie. Sadly. All right. More disagreements between Nikos and me. Stephen Harper. I had a DVD of This Land Is Mine. You did. And I will see it again tonight. I also liked Above Suspicion, 1943, with Joan Crawford, Fred McMurray, and Conrad Veidt in his last movie. Yes, I vaguely remember Above Suspicion. But yeah, let me know what you think of This Land Is Mine. And the fact that you have a DVD of it that's pretty rare. There are not a lot of DVDs out there of This Land Is Mine. All right, Matt says the Knicks championship run had something similar in terms of aesthetic quality, I guess.
You heard it here first that the Knicks, even being in the finals, would be a cultural event beyond sports.
That's right. Nico said it. I was there. Andrew, a line in the Odyssey, though not intended as anti-altruistic, summed up the ideal of pain represented by altruism pretty well. I guess this is the line. The power of a sacrifice is in the cost to the one making it.
Yeah. This is in Nolan's, obviously, in the film. I don't remember it, not that I'm an expert in the original, but yeah, this sums up altruism very well. I remember thinking about that in the cinema. Well done for catching it and for remembering it after the movie.
Good job, Andrew. All right, Jacob, thank you for the sticker. I think I got all the other sticker people. And thank you to all the super chatters. You guys were great today. Thank you to Nikos. And again, no show next week. Generally, there are going to be no shows for me either because I'm doing 8, 16, 24 hours of teaching basically in eight in Austin and 16 in Phoenix, and traveling the other days to get there and to get back. So there's a show tomorrow, but I'm not sure beyond that what's going to happen next week.
Make sure it's not the same time with the final.
What final?
Your show.
Tomorrow.
Make sure your show is not the time.
Tomorrow, yes. I have to make sure it's 3 o'clock, so it'll either be in the evening or it'll be really early. If I do, I'll definitely do a show Monday. I'm not sure about tomorrow. I might skip tomorrow. We'll see. All right, everybody. Thank you, Nikos. Go to bed. I'll see all of you guys, and we will be back in 2 weeks on a Sunday, not on a
Sunday.
Bye, everybody.